Heart sync.
Am you ready? Okay. I will call the regular Ridgway Town Council meeting of May 2023 in order. So roll call, please.
Councilmembers Graham,
Here.
Kroger is not present. Bacon. Here.
There she is.
Sorry.
Stay here.
Here. Skylar.
Here.
Thomas.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Meyer.
Here.
Mayor Clark.
Here. All right, that takes us to additions and deletions of the agenda. Do you have anything to add or delete?
I do not.
I do not.
Okay. Anybody in the council have anything you want to add?
No, sir.
Okay. That brings us to the consent calendar. Then, is there anything on there anybody wants to pull off, or is there a motion approved? So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Russ, seconded by Terry. I guess we can do a all in favor since we're all here. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that's unanimous. That takes us to public comments. This is established time for the public to address council on any item that is not otherwise listed on the agenda. Does anybody have something they want to address this? It's not on the agenda. I guess not. Okay. That takes us to policy matters. Item number 6 is discussion and direction regarding design concept for the Ridgway Visitor Center building.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So as you all should know, town staff's working with Colorado Main Street on some technical assistance from their end to hire a contractor to develop construction level documents for the new visitor center building at Heritage Park for the new, not new, but relatively new Ridgway Visitor Center Master Park Master Plan. Colorado Main Street in the process of developing a RFP, request for proposals, that will be issued probably in the weeks ahead. But first we're looking for some direction from you all. Larry Lucas, he's joining us here today virtually. This is camera on. He is the Colorado Main Street architect. He was kind enough to take a look at our approved master plan recently. Saw that the use of shipping containers was contemplated in that plan, and felt that it may not ultimately align with some of Ridgway's values and overall goals. He was kind enough to pen the memo, the staff notes document that was in the packet for you, some really great information. So thank you, Larry, very much. It gives some insight as to the use of shipping containers for human occupancy, some really interesting information. As I said, he's here with us on Zoom, and he has until about 6 o'clock or 6:05, give or take, before he has to jump to another meeting. So we are very lucky to have Larry for a short period of time. So given the substantial amount of input in that master plan document that's been garnered up to this point, specifically related to the makeup of the visitor center, that shipping container idea, Tara and I thought it would be prudent to visit with you all and get some direction. So I'm happy to answer any questions now. Hopefully you had a chance to read through that staff notes document, but I'd love to turn it over to Larry. He may have some introductory remarks, or you all may just have some questions and want to dive in, but I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that's great. And Larry, I'll just add my thanks for you being here tonight, and offer you to add any comments you might want to the great memo that you supplied that we've all read in our packet.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Clark. Thank you, Preston. Hello, council members. I just spent some time on this. I'm sorry that I didn't actually wasn't involved in the initial design concept there. I feel like I maybe was just out of touch, or I wish that would have been a little different. You know, it just struck me as a little bit. It struck a chord with me when I saw that you guys were looking at shipping containers, or that was the concept that was proposed. So I did a little bit more digging, and having had some experience with shipping container design myself, I felt like I should offer some insight into, you know, where I think this could lead, and then, you know, potentially some other options, just so I wouldn't leave you high and dry. I'd be glad to take any questions. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having us. My colleague and boss, Gail Langley's on the phone as well. So we're both here really at your disposal.
All right, thanks, Gail, for being here too. I guess I would just throw out from the start, as somebody who's been involved in the master planning process over the last several years, my recollection, and Tara can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the idea of the shipping containers came out of a belief that they were going to be relatively simple and relatively inexpensive to use. And it's really helpful to get this memo from you that explains that that's a misconception on our part. So I'm pretty familiar with SIPS panels. I think that's a really interesting option. I think it's apparent that there are limitations to what the use of shipping containers does for us, and that we probably ought to consider going in another direction. But first, let the rest of the council weigh in if anybody has any questions or thoughts, and give Tara an opportunity to weigh in too, or any of you guys in the audience. And we'll go from there. But let's start up here. Anybody else?
I guess we've seen in here some suggested ranges on what the costs of these options are on a per square foot. Do we know what our shipping container cost per square foot was, just to know what our budget impact is from what we originally set up?
I remember when he presented to us, I don't know how many months ago, I was a little shocked at what the prefab price was coming in for the dimensions that he had. It seemed steep, especially since this was it's an easily attainable location for Bill. Whereas, you know, with storage containers, oftentimes the thing that tends to drive it right off the bat is a difficult location to access.
Right.
So per square footage, I remember their numbers being at 460,000 on some of the builds that he was talking about. And I don't even think that was the complete. I think that was just a part of it. It seemed really steep, but that doesn't answer you specifically.
He was quoting in the memo that they worked on a single bedroom residence in Oklahoma using a shipping container, and after outbidding it, we were in the order of $220 a square foot, and then construction cost escalation since the 2017 would put it closer to $390 a square foot. Part of it is that we aren't at a port location where we have large amounts of shipping containers that exist here. I also was in some of the master planning meetings. I don't know that deviating from a shipping container would be outside the spirit of what that body was looking for. I think actually at this point, given some of the notes about shipping containers not being as green as we like, or not being as flexible, might point us towards deviating from what that group was actually looking for when they selected shipping containers, versus taking a modular design or perhaps a more stick-built idea. Like, we were looking for something green that was going to be affordable and functional for what we needed it to be.
Like you, John, I have personal experience using SIPs. I used it in construction of my own home. However, I used it strictly for the roof over what was the timber frame section of my house. So it lent itself really well to that. I thought they were really elegant to work with. They're, you know, that we're able to meet the R ratings for the roof just by virtue of the thickness of the foam and the SIPs. So my house is a hybrid between a stick built and a SIPs, where I use the SIPs in the roof. So it's possible, budget notwithstanding, I'd love to see the whole thing be SIPs from the eco perspective, but possibly there's a way to incorporate SIPs and stick built to save some money.
Yeah, and I would say that I don't think when we in the committee talked about the shipping containers, we didn't really have an idea what the per square foot cost was going to be. Is that correct, Tara?
Do you mind if I come out?
Not at all.
Um,
That's my recollection.
yeah, I don't remember any specific figures that we were given in terms of per square foot for, but I do remember asking DHM Designs, who was the contractor that Colorado Main Street helped us connect with, that did the master planning for us with input from the community. And so we asked we said, well, we'd really like this to be as sustainable and as affordable as possible. We really want to be able to say to the community, we've used your money well on this. And he said, well, I'll give you a comparison between stick built and the shipping containers. And it was so much more for the stick built. It was like, we can't, like, we need to go with a cheaper route here, especially if it's a reused material. But he didn't explore, and I didn't think to ask or know to ask to explore the SIPs panel option. So I'm also grateful that Larry's brought that, because I agree with that, Councilman Lake, and that my sense is that the body was really wanting something that was sustainable and affordable. And that I think my sense is there would be flexibility as to the actual, solution that we went with, so long as it's sustainable and affordable, but we would appreciate the council weighing in.
Tara, as you know, there's a container home being built in our neighborhood.
Yeah.
I drive by it routinely, and at first I thought it was kind of interesting and cool. And as they've been building it out, this is not to be disparaging, but I've noticed they've had to completely stick build the inside of it, and now they're covering the outside of it. I'm thinking, what was the point of having the container to begin with? So it looks like they have to do so much retrofit to it that I'm not sure there's any significant savings other than the the novelty factor of it. It's kind of what I get. But I haven't studied it.
I think one thing to consider as we bandy between the spectrum of SIP panels on the green side and shipping containers, also to be noted now, you can build a stick house. And I think also if we were going to approach local contractors for bids, I think that would be the real determination of price in this market and supply chain. But a stick built house can also be very sustainable as well. I mean, I ended up having on my place bringing 2x4s, all dimensional lumber from Durango for salvaged timber, salvaged wood, from beetle kill and stuff to make it that way. But then everything else in terms of insulation and our values and efficiency and heat pump, et cetera, that can also fall within a viable, affordable realm as well. So not to be discounted,
Yeah.
but understandably, when presented, because of the boldness of the shipping container model, which has its applications in certain places, of course, that kind of jumps out as, at least on the surface, thinking it's a sustainable model. I have two of them on my land on Hastings, and after I went through all the cost of what it would be to retrofit on or put form-fitting foam or blowing foam inside and cutting holes in and everything else, at the end of the day, it was much cheaper to do a stick-built house, based upon all of the pieces and parts that I had to consider. I do remember that the proposal he gave us was, it wasn't going to be a regularly acquired shipping container. It came from Oklahoma, I believe, a company that does that stuff. And that was part of what triggered me on wondering why the costs were so high when you have a company that's actually specializing in these. That should have brought the price down to $100 to $150 a square foot, even a high market. So,
Yeah, and I don't remember if we were aware of companies like Fading West when we were having our discussions that's doing the Wedderburn Homes project, and the fact that they're delivering their modular units at, I think it's pre-finished, but 100, 115 a square foot, something like that. So, the square foot cost can be brought down quite a bit by doing some innovative stuff, I think.
I was gonna say, remind me, did we end up sticking with the idea of like a shipping container as a visitor center and using other ones as like places to put additional information outside, or were we planning it? I can't remember. There was a series of different ideas. I think one of the reasons shipping containers were chosen is it was part of a larger vision for how we were sharing information when the visitor center wasn't open. Am I remembering that conversation correctly?
I'm not sure which iteration you're referring to. Yeah, the concept design, and I apologize for not having it at the ready to share with you right now, but the was kind of like an L-shaped building that you would be towards the south western side of the lot next to the parking lot that would sort of, with sort of like open arms was kind of the concept. So it'd be like L-shaped. It would have sort of the back against the wind that comes from the south at certain times of year, but it wouldn't be, that was sort of the structure that was going to be built out of the shipping containers. Our concept was to have the bathroom separate, kind of where the current visitor center is now. to save the costs on porting over all of the sewage. We don't, now that we talk more with Larry, we're like, oh, that may or may not be practical from a coding perspective. There's more to learn there. But that, I think that there is interpretive information planned other places in the site. So I think that's maybe what you're referring to, but not necessarily in a building.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Does that answer?
Yeah,
the
so we
question?
kind of, yeah,
Yeah.
there were various concepts. I think I was a couple iterations before.
And it might make sense to just clarify the part of the goal and why we came to you today is because we would like to be able to, Colorado Main Street has provided a contractor to help us shape the request for proposals to find a firm to do this work. And we just want to make sure that that request for proposals is specific enough to provide enough guidance to the firm to be able to bring us a detailed proposal. I think that, you know, I'm a layperson, this is not my area of expertise. And so I'm like, I'll just leave it open with options. And I'm learning, no, it's important that we be specific around fairly specific around what kind of design we're looking for.
As much as I'm a fan of SIPs or maybe in a hybrid combination, SIPs and sticks, as a sidebar, after Paul Majors, or maybe it was David Bruce's last presentation on the Wetterhorn project, and looking at the extra chits for local employees, I approached them separately, wondering if the SMPA employees could, achieve that same benefit. And it was too late. But what he did say, and it may be applicable here, is that they could potentially leverage their buying power to do some affordable home building for SMPA. My guess is you might be able to contact them to leverage some of their buying power if you want to go the Fading West prefab route, that they may have some, some advantage in that regard.
I definitely think that's worth exploring, but.
Our timing on the Ridgway project might be a little tight, but maybe as things were coming.
Yeah.
Down the
No,
road.
it would have to be in a later queue, I'm sure, but
Yeah.
they maybe have some buying leverage.
Also,
I mean, I don't think we necessarily have to go through homes. I think we can go directly to Fading West to talk to them about it, see.
Well, there's plenty more conversations to be had,
Right.
but I think we're hearing some direction to, I haven't heard from everybody, but some direction that we can afford for some flexibility and articulate that by way of the RFP, which is that next step. Is that accurate?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Gail, Larry, do you think that's good enough direction for Andrew Coburn to wrap up drafting that RFP?
What do you think, Gil?
Well, I will chime in here. Sorry, I was trying to find the mute button. And thank you for really taking the time to read through Larry's comments. So we are very honored to have an architect on staff that has had some experience with shipping containers. I think moving forward, in order to make this RFP a little bit more cost effective, I think I don't really want to include a couple of options of saying either shipping container or modular. I'd like to narrow it down to one. Otherwise, the cost for this is going to be exorbitantly high.
Okay.
I would suggest them looking at modular models.
I agree.
I was pretty convinced by this memo that shipping containers are sort of a false sustainable option.
They work for some
especially-
things, but not for.
Yeah,
Especially with the chemicals on the inside and having to retrofit them to be habitable.
Yeah. No, I would agree. If I were to have to choose, I would say let's look at the modular direction, just because of the potential for cost savings there.
And maybe beyond just Fading West as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they have
Yeah, there's
another
a,
competitor in state, and there's also one coming into Montrose as well.
There's that one.
okay. I think I'm hearing that there's unanimity about modular being the direction. Anybody else in the audience want to weigh in? Sue?
Thank you. Sue Hush, and I asked, of course, my husband with BTB Construction about this as well, and he also had concerns with shipping containers not being green on the front end. But of course, he's going to tell you that he and his team can build double wall, passive house certified small buildings like that pretty effectively as well. So again, combination of SIPs panel. He also, as I remember, when we were talking about this in the initial conversations, and I was probably a couple iterations back as well, speed was a thing too, because already we were seeing supply chain issues at that point, and those are pretty much resolved now. But did anybody see the Fairfield Inn go up at by the Justice Center in Montrose? It went up in little chunks, just
Legos.
like Legos laid on top of each other. So I think that there's a lot of other options to be had. And I don't know whether you want to weigh out a kind of a SIPS stick, double wall passive house kind of option either, knowing that it can be done here. So
And one of the benefits of that option, especially the passive side of it, whether it's all SIPs or SIPs stick, is flexibility in design, but also cost of operation.
And yeah, I mean, they're ready for solar, they're ready for, but they don't really need it. I mean, we've got houses on Hastings right now with nothing on holding at 65 degrees. And we've got the wind and we've got the weather right here. So thanks.
Thanks, Susan. Anyone else on land? All right, I'm hearing that little bit of a, we call it backpedal, but maybe a request that we consider sort of a SIPS hybrid option as well.
So we kind of have. What it almost sounds like, and I'd love some guidance here, is this body doesn't know whether to ask for a modular quote or a SIPS quote, or to accept that, yes, the costs go up and maybe we have to kick something in and actually get feedback on both options. Because I don't know that I have information to weigh in on one side of that or another.
Yeah, and I kind of agree with that as well. I mean, we know that modulars are designed to a specific standard. We know that SIPs, you can have a little more flexibility as well as passive. And both of those are going to be more sustainable and energy efficient, lower cost. And then there's also things like construction, how fast can we get a stick built thing on the schedule and built in the time frame that we're looking for, whereas we know we can get through a SIPs company, installation time is very short. So those are all other things that we need a little more information on before I feel comfortable going, let's research that one fully and get an RFP. And I'm not saying that it's not a complete package, we just don't have all the information I think we need.
Yeah, again, just a reminder, this is an RFP to to solicit proposals from firms to undertake that process to develop construction level documents. So that's where we're at in this stage. And that process will be, I don't have the RFP in front of me, but a good chunk of time for the town staff, town council, stakeholders, to provide input as we go. I think there's some milestone dates. And so Gail, please correct me if I'm wrong, but some milestone dates and some public presentations that will be worked into, or that have been worked into that RFP are already identified as necessary for that process. So I don't know if I'm answering your question or or talking to your point, but I mean, we're just in the infancy stage and we'll get to that part where we'll be able to provide some more direction and input.
So is there a way, and you can tell me whatever is the truth, and I will be very happy, but is there a way that we could get proposals for multiple options? Is that something that we could do? Like, can we get a modular home proposal or RFP? Can we get a SIPS RFP, and can we get a stick build?
So I think you heard Gail say that the cost would be a little more exorbitant.
Okay.
Also, this is technical assistance from the state of Colorado, from Colorado Main Street.
Okay.
Which means that the town, if in theory this goes the way we want it to, just like we did in hiring DHM to modify that site plan, the town didn't have to pay out of pocket for that. Colorado Main Street offered that technical assistance, which is awesome, which is why Larry, Gail, Andrew, that whole team, they're absolutely wonderful. So we should all thank them when this session is over. But I'm trying to make a point here.
Yeah.
That, a little limited as far as the technical assistance, and Gail can certainly, or Larry can talk to that a little bit more. I just want to remind everybody about that.
Thank you.
And that's what I was actually trying to appeal to is Gail was saying we didn't want to do proposals for a shipping container. And then, which of the other options, but I guess where I'm at is I'm really having trouble being like, yes, I'm picking, stick built or SIPs or whatever versus a modular because I don't have the information. So Gail's trying, can we get some guidance on that?
I was going to say, really, it boils down to the ideals behind the construction. With anything that's going to be prefabbed off-site completely and brought in, is it going to be to the same standards as something that you can design custom? So with a SIPS panel system, you could get a lot more integrated, a lot tighter construction. I believe even still, it does take good craftsmanship with either. But I think your lead time might be further out to do something made in a shop too. So I'm thinking if you're going to go for something like a passive house certified building, which would just be fantastic. Not that you have to do certification, but if you follow all the principles, then the building itself becomes a point of interest instead of necessarily just a building. It's saying this is the standard that we built to, and this is kind of our high bar that we're setting for the community.
And another thing that occurs to me is that if we're talking about, just for sake of discussion here, going with preferring the modular approach, then the RFP for construction drawings becomes very different because these modular companies don't offer a lot of different floor plans and shapes and sizes. And I'm not even sure how Andrew would go about drafting that because he'd have to probably talk to a number of different companies that are doing these modular units and find out what size units they're offering right now and tailor the RFP to that. So I see that as being, well, initially we were saying that we like the idea of modular, in my view, primarily because the cost savings. It actually really hamstrings us, sort of. It ties our hands into what we're going to get because they don't offer.
Well, and to his point, if we reoriented the ideal of the construction to be a model of sorts, may open up grant opportunities that we could, offset some of the additional costs with.
Can somebody remind me of the timeline of how we ended up with this agreement with DHM? Was that their name or what was?
DHM was the contractor that
With the shipping.
they developed a master plan for the whole Heritage Park.
All right.
And the shipping containers, which is something that came out of the committee talking and debating and.
DHM responded to the input that the community members gave around, and the timeline that I think Preston is referring to that we're trying to work with Colorado Main Street. Is that also part of your question?
Yeah, it's bundled in there. I just was trying to tease apart the commitment that we have. And I mean, I came to it because I was a newbie here
Yeah.
of when that iteration came up. I had figured that there was a lot of other options considered before then, but it sounds like that was just one that was presented out of that master plan discussion.
I think it was one that had come up from the community as like what folks would like to see in terms of, around the values of sustainability and reusing materials. So that was something that DHM Design created a concept plan for us in response to the community input. And so the next step with help from the state of Colorado Main Street program is to develop the more detailed construction plans to sort of undergird that concept plan. And so in that process, we've had, Larry's input, and I think with the time frame that the state works on is starting July 1. So our goal is to have this decision made and the request for proposals written so it can be posted with enough time to then start the job July 1. So that's kind
That's
of,
what I was trying to pick up on the timeline.
yeah.
I didn't know how far down the line the commitment was with the shipping container element of it.
Yeah,
And to go back to the board at this point for a request for proposal at this scale, that's tight.
yeah. And I want to just check with Gail and Larry to see if I've got that time frame accurate.
Yes, Tara, you do. If we get if there is some decisions made and we can get the RFP out and get proposals back and review them with, all of you who want to participate in that. We can probably have it under contract, probably the second week in July because of year-end close and year-end open. There's a little collision with accounting.
If I can just say something real quick. I believe from our previous discussions in the early days of this, that we ended up going the shipping container route because we wanted to kind of pay homage to the railroad history in the valley. And when we lost the railroad cars, we thought that maybe those shipping containers would kind of take on that identity. And so to piggyback on what John said, I think the prefab might kind of lock us into a different style than what the idea was initially, and we might have more flexibility with an actually stick structure that we build, put together, not only from environmental aspect, the sustainable aspect, but also we can throw in some of those railroad kind of historical type aspect to it.
Corrugated siding or something.
Something like that, yeah.
And I love the concept of the open arms, like the building having open arms welcoming people in. I mean, that seems more Ridgway at its core to me than a prefab.
It's one of only a few configurations you can do with two rectangles.
Can I say one other thing about the shipping containers? And that is just the size of them. The interior programming of this, we talked about a little bit with Preston and Tara. It's going to be a little bit more limited based on the width of the shipping container and then adding insulation and walls in that. So it probably is ADA accessible. Larry, correct me if I'm wrong, but the interior width dimension would be what, about 8 feet?
No,
8.5 feet?
Rest of
7.6 on the inside.
Yeah, it'd be less, but you only have to have a 5-foot clear turnaround, essentially a diameter turnaround. But that really limits what you can put in there in terms of furniture and racks and things too. So
I think we're all in agreement, at least from what I've heard, that the shipping container hasn't turned out to be the right option. And even though initially I was hearing that majority of us were in favor of going modular, now I'm hearing that I think the more we think about it, the more flexibility, the more options, local construction, people to go with the SIPs, either straight SIPs or SIPs stick-built combo. And I don't think that's too vague for the RFP, is it, Gail?
No, that would be acceptable. Yeah.
Awesome.
I think we've landed on that.
Wow, you guys are good.
We tried.
Thank you guys for being here. I think we have what we need.
Gail, Larry, can't tell you how much we appreciate you all taking the time tonight for everything you do for the town of Ridgway.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great to see
Yep.
you.
appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll get together with Andrew and we'll move forward, okay?
Sounds good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks again. All right, that takes us to item number 7, action on request to close a portion of Clinton Street for the Ridgway Space to Create grand opening celebration on June 22nd, 2023. Terry, you're on this one.
And so this is, we're excited to be able to join together with the Art Space Projects Company and the residents of the new Space to Create building to celebrate the grand opening. Folks have been living there since October, but we wanted to give time for residents to get settled and to kind of get to know each other a little bit. And this is our opportunity to thank all the different people who've contributed from many different directions, as well as to really welcome the residents of Space to Create to their new homes and to the neighborhood. So the idea is closing down Clinton Street as a way of just really having a great celebration, bringing a stage in across Clinton Street at the intersection of Laura and Clinton. And we're in the Fuse Creative Main Street Committee is in the process of having conversations with the residents and business owners along the road to just hear any ways they might want to participate or any concerns they might have that we need to accommodate. Our plan is to bring in at least 1 porta potty. I've reserved 2. Can nail that down and make sure we have plenty of space for for folks to use the restroom. And we're working on securing some entertainment, highlighting the 10-year anniversary of the Creative District at the same time. So we'll be having an art show in the Space to Create community room, which maybe by that time will have a new name honoring the Deckers. That'll also be part of the event, and honoring again just all the people involved and the just the investment in the Creative District over the last 10 years by the community. So.
Great. Thank you. So closing Clinton from North Core to North Laura, and all the details spelled out in the application here. Does anybody have any questions for Tara? Gonna be a great event. Looking forward to it.
And move that we approve the special use event permit.
Seconded.
Motion made by Terry, seconded by Polly. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Awesome. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. One note on there, I see you have a battery powered PA system. You need one that plugs in and can carry. I've got one for
That
you.
would be great, Jason. That'd be
I think
awesome.
we'll probably get this out.
I've got a few
And I think we'll probably need one.
Okay, we'll look with you about that. Thank you. That's what-
Council will hook you up.
Good to have creatives on the council.
Okay, so that takes us to, you may as well step here. We got your next. Item number 8, review and direction on Ridgway Space to create recognition plaque and community room dedication.
Would you like me to speak to this?
Yes.
So this is, there are 2 plaques planned for the Space to Create room, Space to Create building. One is, we're also doing this in partnership with Art Space. So this is traditional in the Art Space buildings that they call it a naming wall, where they name the different people that have contributed and groups that have contributed both financially and with leadership and time to the successful completion of the project. We've co-drafted this text for the naming wall. We'll be sharing the cost of this with Art Space. John Billings has been kind enough to offer his services to help us actually craft the plaques, which I'm thrilled about. So there are 2 plaques. This one that you see up on the screen is the naming wall that kind of gives recognition to the different groups and individuals involved. The second plaque, and you can see the materials and size noted there. The second plaque is to dedicate the community room. So that's for the Decker Community Room is the name that's being proposed in honor of Peter and Dee Dee Decker. And those are the brands from their ranch. They've been really instrumental. They were the landowners of that property where the Space to Create now sits, and have just been wonderful leaders in the community in a lot of different ways. What am I missing, John?
That's it.
Okay.
That's great.
So the request from council is the approval to dedicate the room to Peter and Dee Dee Decker, and both of these honorary plaques.
Anybody have any questions about these? And we've been talking, as Tara said, we've been talking to John Billings, and he's been very generous with his time, and I'm sure they'll be amazing pieces of work. So
They'll be
I'm
great.
excited.
I guess I should also mention that the proposed concept is that the plaque with this text and rough design would go in the community room, the side that the town manages, and that the larger honorary plaque would go in the lobby of the Space to Create building, the Art Space side and the resident side. And that Art Space is planning to pick up the cost for that plaque, with the town picking up the cost for the Deckers plaque, pending the cost estimates that come back from Mr. Billings.
Great. Anybody in the audience have questions for Tara or comments about any of this? Anybody on Zoom? Thanks, Tara. I think this is great. Preston, do we need a motion on this?
I think just a move to approve would be cool.
Okay.
I move to approve for naming the community room within the Space to Create the DD or the Decker Community Room.
Second.
All right. Motion by Paulie, second by Russ, all in favor? Opposed? All right, thank you. Thanks, Tara.
Thanks, Tara.
All right, that brings us to public requests and presentations. Item number 9 is presentation on Voyager Youth Program expansion and Communities of Care Coalition strategy. Alex, welcome.
So in the spirit of meeting fatigue and email fatigue, we thought we would come to you and just give a quick update on the changes at Voyager and the expansion. And just to say thank you for your continued support in believing in Voyager. And we're just so grateful to have so many community partnerships, and we really value our relationship with the town council. So there's no ask, we just wanted to just spread some information. So since the new year, we have expanded our after school program into year A. Voyager actually started in year A, so it's nice to be able to bring it back there and be able to offer our after school program in both schools. We expanded our license. So historically we were serving children 5 to 11 with our after school and summer program. And we are now accepting 3 and 4-year-olds. And we're able to grow our license from taking 40 kids per day to 55. And Pat here is our CTC coalition leader. And we have moved our teen programs. You probably are somewhat aware, but we closed our teen center. We were just seeing really low numbers and low engagement. So we have brought our teen programs to be a lot more community focused and engaging different partners to host these kind of cool monthly pop-up teen events. Our early childhood program, we are, for the summer, are serving 13 brand new 3-year-olds. Half of them we've never seen names, we don't know the families. A lot of them have not been in a structured environment yet, so we're in for a lot of fun. We have 14 new 4-year-olds, and that was 15 additional slots of full day summer care that we're able to offer for Erie County families. And our summer program for the 3 to 7-year-old kids is totally sold out within like 2 days, just like that, to speak to the child care need. Yeah. We're working with Preston and local governments, social services, the schools. We have a work group addressing infant toddler care in the community and working on finding some funding streams. So we're being a partner and trying to address that gap as well. So our CTC Communities that Care Coalition, we have some participants in here as well. That coalition kind of took a break during COVID. It was really hard to engage folks over Zoom, surprise. But with Pat's leadership, we've been really able to actually start doing things. So we spent a lot of time recruiting new coalition members, growing their capacity, and implementing some of these evidence-based strategies. So our mission with CTC is upstream prevention. So we're looking at promoting mental health and decreasing substance use, and just creating a safe and welcoming environment for all youth. So our selected strategies are creating safe spaces for teens. We're an awesome partnership with Tara and the chamber and quite a few folks in this community in this room, promoting positive youth development in the community. So looking at the adults that work with youth in our community and priming them to really have successful relationships with young people. And then engaging civic engagement. So your youth town council, we have a youth seat on our board, the Ridgway school board. Those are all things that have kind of grown out of the CTC initiative. So we hosted, so we're trying to engage folks who maybe don't have the time or capacity to sit on a coalition, but we're trying to just reach the community any way that we can. So we hosted our first community dinner in Uray last month. And then in partnership with John and Carolyn Dresler, we are hosting the first ever repair cafe. So stay tuned, that's in the works. But you can Google it, it's kind of a cool idea to have like more of a sustainable approach to fixing your vacuum or your microwave or your lamp and your computer and things like that. So we'll be looking for folks who want to volunteer for that, or if you need something fixed, we'll get a system for outreach and that kind of stuff. But that'll be July 15th at the 4-H Center. Today we hosted a positive youth development training. Thanks, Pam, for coming. I think we had 14 participants, but we'll be hosting those quarterly. And again, that's a great opportunity for employers who employ youth We see a lot of teens that just kind of roll through jobs. So we want to help employers build those positive relationships with teens so that hopefully the teens come back and you have a sustainable youth workforce. We're launching the Hub, which stands for Help Us Break Boredom, which is again our community focused summer program. So kind of a one-stop shop for a teen to go and say, what can I do today? What's going on this weekend? We have that problem with adults in this community that there's so much stuff going on, but there's not a centralized place, or there are a couple of centralized spaces that you can find that. So we're really trying to drill that in and come up with some fun and exciting stuff for teens to do. We are launching an art mentorship program. I think we have 5 mentors.
Yeah, for
4 mentors, yeah, 4 students. So that's another piece. And then multi-day trips for teens. This is our first year. Again, Pat's leadership. We're taking the kids on a 4-night, 5-day rafting trip, staying up at the Hay Lodge for 2 nights. And doing a junction trip, and then we have a full day adventure week, rock climbing, via ferrata, canyoneering, and all that kind of stuff. And then we've been partnering with Dragonfly Creative for monthly teen nights. So again, the approach is anyone who's interested in hosting an event or they have this great idea, come to us because we're trying to take everyone's ideas and kind of put it in a central place. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot,
Thanks.
Alex. I'd just like to add that I've been involved with Voyager and CTC for, gosh, 6-7 years now, and it's an amazing program. What Voyager does for the youth of the county is fabulous, and it's so cool to see how you're expanding. So really appreciate you coming in to give us these updates. And yeah, the repair cafe thing is something I stumbled onto about a month and a half ago, just online, and it's the idea that instead of having people just throw stuff out, say your floor lamp doesn't work anymore, or your toaster doesn't work anymore, instead of throwing it out and buying a new one, you bring it to this repair cafe and somebody takes a look at it and sees if they can fix it. Like, I'm going to be offering lamp repair. I've made lamps for years, and I can do that. Probably some form of computer repair. I'm not sure we could get a little deep in the weeds there, but if any of you have a skill that you'd like to offer, whether it be, sewing or small engine repair, or bicycle repair, I think it'd be really cool to have a bike repair. What'd you say, Sue? Flat tires, bike and car. So it's just lots of potential, and it's a really cool idea to keep people from throwing out stuff that still has some value. So I'm excited about building that, and yeah, it's just another great community venture that's been really successful over the years.
Yeah.
Anybody have any questions, comments to add? Appreciate your comment. Anybody in the audience?
Good job, you guys. Yeah.
All right, that takes us to item number 10, proclamation declaring May 2023 as Mental Health Awareness Month. That has my name on it. And as a lot of you know, I've been very open about my experiences with mental health challenges. I've dealt with depression on and off my entire life. And I think it's high time that we stop making the stigma out of mental health issues. And I think most of us know how many, I guess I'd say how youth in particular right now is really struggling mental health wise. I think a lot of us are coming out of COVID and basic state of the world these days. It's hard not to have some mental health challenges. And I think it's really important to open up awareness about that. And so that this is the minimal thing we can do. The proclamation, I won't read the whole thing, but it talks about how Tri-County Health Network fights all year for mental health to be a community focus. There's a movie that go to tricountyhealth.org. It probably is. They're presenting a film by a Ridgway youth who did the Sniffles Traverse as a way to address his mental health challenges. I'm looking to find a way for us to present it here in Uray County as well. The Women's Club Uray, Women's Club of Uray is offering a mental health training. I believe it's May 19th or June 19th. June 19th. June 19th, twice, once in the morning, once in the evening. You can go to Women's Club Uray County.org and sign up for that. I just encourage you to reach out. If you know somebody that's struggling, you know somebody that just seems like they're a little down, try and offer them a hand and do what you can to make a difference in people's life. I think it's just essential that we do that. So that's my spiel on this, and I ask council to approve this proclamation.
Motion to approve the declaration proclaiming May 2023 as Mental Health Awareness Month.
Second.
Motion made by Polly, seconded by Russ. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Didn't think so. Thanks, everybody. And I didn't give an opportunity to anybody in the audience. Some of you may know, I wrote a piece in the paper about 6 months ago, talking about my challenges and talking about how important it is that we lift a stigma on mental health. And I would just encourage any of you who've dealt with mental health challenges to do the same. Offer to write. I know for a fact the paper would print more of these, and that was my goal in writing what I wrote, is to get more of us to open up to the community and tell those that are struggling that they're not alone. I think that's really important. So I would encourage you to do that. Thank you. All right, so moving along, next item is we have two public hearings tonight. Item number 11 is an application for restaurant liquor license from Ridgway Natural Foods LLC, members Jesse Vaughn and Hyun Young In, DBA Lotus Root, location 618 Clinton Street. Pam?
That's correct. This is an application from an existing business on Clinton Street. Lotus Root previously was Ridgway Natural
Grocery, or natural foods, yeah.
And they're looking at just expanding by getting a liquor license to serve. They now serve food on their patios and inside. And they're just looking at getting a liquor license really to serve cocktails in the summertime to their patrons. At this point, they've met all the requirements for a liquor license, and I have noticed the hearing, noticed the premises and published all notices. The applicant leases the premises. There is a valid lease, and they will be asking to include in their license the building and the patio areas on the north and south sides of the building, where they're going to have seating. And they also are applying for a concurrent review on their liquor license. This type of application allows the state and town to be looking at the license at the same time, and also allows, after approval by us here at the local, and for us to issue a temporary operating permit until their state license has been received. And they are not present, so I'm here representing.
Okay. Do you know how they're planning to get people to the south patio in the back of the property? Just curious.
I don't.
Through the kitchen.
I would imagine there's a door somewhere. You know what? I don't have the drawing in front of me. I believe there's a door somewhere that
Probably not a
goes out
big
along
deal,
the
but
kitchen. Yeah. Off the wall there.
Okay. Anybody that will start up here, anybody on council? Well, this is a public hearing, so we have to first ask council if anybody has any comments or questions about this application. And then at the end of that, we will open up the public comment period for both people on Zoom and people in the audience to make comments. And when that's done, I'll close that hearing and we'll make a decision up here. So start up here. Anybody got any comments?
I do. Does that include the sidewalk in front of the?
No, they don't.
Just
No.
the patio?
Just their
The gravel area.
premises goes to the sidewalk. I think it's a little higher right
Yeah,
there.
it's about a
Yeah,
little curved
it'll
step
there.
up.
No, it wouldn't be on the sidewalk. If they chose to do that, it would come back to council and they would need to have a permit to use the sidewalk. So all the alcohol use that's currently on Clinton Street has a permit with the town.
And are they clear on that? That it would only be to that limit in the courtyard there?
Yes, we discussed that.
Okay.
They know what they want, they're asking.
They'll have to sign it. They'll have to say no alcohol.
They didn't, I asked them, they didn't want it. They just wanted their in the courtyard.
Makes sense.
Makes sense. It just, yeah, I could see there could be an easy presumption because adjacently you have people dying on the
Right. Yeah.
sidewalks. I just want to make sure it was discussed.
It's a really good point. Any other comments or questions up here? Seems like a reasonable ask. So I'll open up public comment. Anybody in the audience here or on Zoom want to make comments or have questions? Going once, going twice. Okay, I will close public comment and bring it back up here for deliberation.
Pretty cut and dry to me.
Move to approve the application for the restaurant liquor license for Lotus Room.
Second. Okay, motion made by Ryan, seconded by JT. All in favor? Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. That brings us to the second public hearing, item number 12, application for tavern liquor license from Irwin Acker LLC, member Jeffrey Kaplan, Neil Elenoff, DBA, Adobe in location 251 Odell. Pam.
Yes, so this is a current location that actually held the liquor license in the past. We all know that Adobe Inn and Restaurant. There's new owners, and their idea at the time of making application was to use the premises or have the bar area open and use the premises within that bar area, which we all know is the area with the little Kiva fireplace, and then to open it to the outside and have food truck is what they were thinking about at that time, and have music and maybe movies and things out there. Yesterday, the applicant who is here and probably wants to address you this evening came in and said they're actually looking at now putting in a restaurant, but we're going to move forward with this request for a tavern license because there is no restaurant in the building right now. So the application before you is for a tavern license. All the documents have been received by the town, and I have posted and published premises. Everything has been met that needs to be met from the applicant and from the town at this point. The applicant owns the premises, and they are looking at including in the licensing the front entrance area, you know, when you go into the doors into the little enclosed area, the south side and the back side of the existing Adobe facility. And they also are asking for concurrent review, which means the state reviews at the same time the town does. This also allows us, after town approval, to issue a temporary operating permit when they're ready, if we haven't received the state license by that time. So I know that Jeff is here and wants to talk to the council.
Okay. No, it's going to talk about, but thank you, Kevin, for all your help. We're excited for the opportunity to reopen this beloved institution. We aspire for it to be kind of a model third place. I don't know if anyone here knows the planning term, but it's meant to be kind of between what is public and what is private. And that's what we felt in terms of what Adobe Inn was. And when the owners trusted this group to purchase the building, we really felt a responsibility to make sure that it honored the past, but also allowed it to move towards the future and really serve as a focal point for this town. And it needs to be something special and singular. So our vision is that we have a group, we have an operating team, and some of the partners here, Chef Dat. If you all have any questions about what we're planning in terms of how we're honoring, how he's planning to honor the previous menu and also bring it to the future. And then everyone knows you're venerated public citizen Ridgway that we are very close friends with and are so excited is going to be running out of the house. And this is the partnership. And the idea is to open it and to really listen to the community. And David's here for the summer And it's really, sort of a give and take, because we don't know. And there's so much responsibility to get it right and to not screw it up because it was so important. And we're here to listen. And as a result of this sort of initial pop-up through the summer, the intention is for it to stay there with this team. So if anyone has any questions from David or Renee, please ask. And thank you all so much for considering issuing the WME list.
Thanks for being here, Jeffrey. Anybody up on council have any questions for either Pam or the applicant?
Red and green chill.
Christmas every day, sir. Christmas every day.
And when they convert to a restaurant, they have to reapply for a restaurant liquor license then?
Yes, but they wouldn't have to. They could continue to run under a tavern license because the tavern license only requires that they have snack foods available. But yeah, we modify the license.
How many days a week operation it is?
That's an issue of staff, and our intention is to be able to as many days as possible.
The idea is to be consistent and to be 7 days a week. We all know that requires work and people. And so if we have to build to it, we'll build to it and go in phases, just like we'll do with the building itself, and the restoration of the whole entire place itself will come in phases. But man, it's time to just gather in there again. So the idea is to be open 7 days a week, but staffing is really the key.
And then in terms of the food truck, is that a single food truck or rotating?
Mitchell Bosford to bring in a food truck and set in the backyard while renovations are being done. When I got to town on Tuesday, on first look at the kitchen, I saw the bones were still amazing, it was farming inside. I didn't understand why we didn't just go with redoing the kitchen. I have all the necessary restaurant equipment all ready to stock the entire building. So that sitting in storage, I would have it in use here and show you all some very charming and amazing videos. And it's just that way.
Great.
Yeah, I think it would be really great to have someone in there.
Yep. We've all been excited to see that property re-energized for sure.
And the salad will be back.
Corn casserole.
It'll be
You're always getting someone mad. It's like, that's not what it was. That's.
But you can show people how it be. Absolutely.
And I can't remember, did they used to have margaritas in there?
Yeah.
Why not?
And then we'll have the Lene margaritas.
Okay, good.
So I move that.
Somebody's excited. Somebody's ready. First, I have to open up for public comment. People in the audience or on Zoom have any questions or comments about this application?
Got a thumbs up from Sue.
Got a thumbs up from Sue. That's formal. Going once, going twice. All right, I'll close the public comment and you can go.
Okay. I move to approve the tavern liquor license for Irwin Acker LLC for 251 Liddell Street.
Okay.
Motion made by Beth, seconded by Kevin. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There you go.
Thank you, everybody.
Looking forward to it. All right, moving right along. Now into policy matters. Item number 13 is a biggie. You've got ordinance number 03-2023, amending chapter 6, building regulations, amending chapter 7, planning and zoning, and amending chapter 8, licensing of the Ridgway Municipal Code, and amending the official zoning map. We have Katie Kent and TJ Dublock of Community Planning Strategies here to lead this off for us. Katie, are you going to start off, or TJ?
I am going to start, and I am apologizing on behalf of TJ. He had a conflict and he is actually not on tonight. So
We'll take you. We know you'll do a bang up job.
excellent. Thank you. So I can share a brief presentation if you would like, kind of recapping where we are, where we've came from and the main goals, or I can refer to you to let me know if you want me to focus in on anything off of the memo and the final draft versions you have before you. What would you like?
What do we think? Do we want do you want Katie to go through the memo, or do you want to just dive right in? I think it might be nice to have a little refresher. Why don't you give us the thumbnail refresher?
Perfect. And that little stall gave Preston the time to let me share my screen. So now we're good. Okay, so as a reminder for you, we are working on the land use regulation updates. We have been working on this for a while. And focusing in on the objective of tonight's discussion is primarily to give a brief overview on the process we went through, answer any questions that you have, or provide more feedback if you want to discuss further what we are proposing. And then hopefully get to the end of this item and you'll hopefully feel confident in a motion on the first reading of the ordinance. So with that said, I'm just going to skip through without going into slideshow mode here. All right, so as a refresher, the objectives of what we were doing for these code amendments was to clarify the zoning and subdivision review process, remove the contradictions and duplication between code sections, and create a structure that can easily be updated to adapt to changing trends and needs. So what you've seen is that we have pulled certain sections out of chapter 7 and out of chapter 6 and chapter 8. And we've relocated those into the new chapter 7 land use regulations. So what's before you tonight is chapter 6 and chapter 8 have sections that have been removed from them. And then those sections that were removed have been reinserted into chapter 7. So we didn't delete them from town code. We just reorganized for that. So everything is a little bit more concise for that chapter 7, the land use development regulations. We also wanted to remove the contradictions and duplication. That got into a little bit more work, as you've seen, as we came before you about a month ago. The Planning Commission saw a lot of this, and some of that led to some policy changes and discussions. Some changes such as renaming the industrial districts, which will in effect change the names on the map. So kind of as we reorganized, made things easier, it did have some side effects that we brought forward to the town to try to continue making things a little bit easier to read. And then what we have now is a final product proposed that the town can easily put in place holders or change or modified code language as things, trends and needs change in the future. An example for that is you don't have an Article 7. There's section 7 within chapter 7 right now, but it's a placeholder for affordable housing, which we know is a big priority for the town to move forward with. We also, as a side note, I believe you saw in your packet, we did create a list of future code amendments for the town council to discuss. Not tonight, unless you wanted to, but that is really just a placeholder for you so that you can kind of talk as a group as you want to move forward of what your priorities are. The Planning Commission has weighed in on some of their priorities, and we tried to emphasize that in the table that we created. And we also included public comments in there. So then timeline, oh, was there a question or?
No, go ahead.
Nope. Okay. So how did we get here? Just as a refresher for you, we started this off with a kickoff with the Planning Commission back in September 22nd, September 2022. We moved forward with a few different meetings with Planning Commission. We also invited the community, primarily developers, to a scenarios work session in January where we could really expand on what we were proposing as far as the application types and the processes that an applicant would have to go through to apply for different various land use, zoning and subdivision and PUD applications. We were before you on April 12th with a kind of initial discussion with you and updates of the Planning Commission meetings. And just on April 25th, the Planning Commission made a motion to recommend the town council approve the proposed amendments. With that said, they had a few changes, and we did include those changes in the documents provided to you tonight. And include the end of your memo from CPS for tonight's meeting did have us kind of cut and paste images so you could see what was changed, so that it was kind of just so you were aware, but you didn't have a track changes version of the code coming before you to read as a final draft. So I think you're all familiar with the sections of code. As I noted, there's no section 7, and we skip it purposely as a placeholder for the town because it would fit in very well there for affordable housing. I kind of gave you an overview about the changes that have been made since your last meeting. Those were in response to the Planning Commission. Prior to that, we had public comments, and we had incorporated those in and shared those with the council and Planning Commission also. So modifications have been made in response to comments received, and we feel confident, and hopefully the town would agree that we've addressed these as they have been requested of us. And timeline, what's coming up? So we are at the first reading tonight. We would like to have a work session for the development community. Preston has helped us with a good day and a day for that, May 23rd. It would be in the evening, and we are looking at a virtual so that it may be easier for more of the development community to attend. And then we're looking to bring this back to you for a second reading of the ordinance on June 14th. And that would give you an effective date of July 14th approximately. With that said, we are recommending that the town council move to refer the ordinance to a public hearing on June 14th, 2023 to adopt the proposed code amendments. Again, it does include chapter 6, building regulations, chapter 7, planning and zoning, and chapter 8, licensing. Yep, you bet. Happy to answer, get in depth, any questions that you have.
All righty, so what I'm trying to find, what's the time on the developer workshop?
May 23rd.
23rd, what time?
5:30.
5:30? And you felt like Zoom only was a good option?
We did have a actually, I don't think we have talked about it in detail. We just thought that there might be a better attendance with the virtual only, plus Katie and TJ would need to attend virtual.
Right.
I was talking with, Katie doesn't know this, I was talking with TJ today. There might be some potential for them to be in person, but we won't know that for a few days. So that's all subject to change. But we are looking at May 23rd, the evening of May 23rd, which wouldn't be a formal meeting of the town council or planning commission or anything, which would be a public forum workshop of sort. Yeah, of course, you all would be welcomed and well received at that.
Of course, I have a conflict, but I would just suggest that you maybe consider having it be hybrid, just because I'm thinking some of the development community might rather be in person, even if you guys can't be, Katie. But I'm open. I understand the thought. It's just everybody's different, and some people would probably rather not do Zoom. Just a thought.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Anybody on council have any questions, comments? I want to dig into the details at all on this. We've been going at this for a long time. Russ and I on the planning commission. We've got Pam Foister here, who's also on the planning commission. And if you like, but it's been an incredible process, really. I've said more than once that going into it, I was actually a little nervous about how it was going to go. And I've been totally blown away with what a great job Katie and TJ have done. And I think we've got just an incredibly well-crafted update to our planning and zoning regs that really were dated. And I'm just really excited about what we've been able to accomplish with these guys' help. So throw that out. Val, you have a question?
Yes, I actually have a comment and I guess a question. It's in the news section under the outdoor lighting. I think there's a typo in here. Is that on page 55, near the top. I think it's public outdoor lighting. Item 3, it refers to all town-owned lighting shall comply with the requirements of section 6.5 within 5 years, etc. I believe that section 6.5 is no longer going to be applicable. I think you need to point to section, the new numbering for that section, which would probably be 7-4-6K.
Good catch. That's right.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so that's my comment. And the question I have is I guess I'm a little bit unfamiliar with what would be the effective date, because I think the updating lighting code was effective, I believe, in October of 2019. Would that still be the case with this new section 7, or are we going to reset the timer to whenever this is approved?
The timer would not be reset, Val. We're simply recodifying, so there's no need I'm not saying you're worried, but no need to worry about the timer being reset.
Okay.
Lighting regs were adopted in 2019, as you said.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a little bit unclear to me as to what's going to be the effective date and all that. So, and I just wanted to get that clarified. Thanks very much, Preston. I think that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bob. Anyone else? Either in the room or on Zoom? We'll see more hands in Zoom. Anybody in the room?
Kudos to all the amazing amount of work it took to do that, and to you guys on the planning commission as well.
Yeah, it was a good job.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Major kudos to Katie, TJ, and Preston and town staff. Really well done and well handled, so. Somebody want to make a motion if there are any other comments?
What are we, this is the first reading.
This is it. It moved to introduce.
As a first reading.
Yep. Just by introducing it, it becomes the first reading.
Okay, I move to do that.
So Terry so moves.
Second.
Yes, so seconds. Motion by Terry, second by Russ. All in favor? Opposed? That's unanimously. Thanks, Katie.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
You too, pass along our thanks to TJ again too. All right, that takes us to. That takes us to item number 14, review and action on workforce and affordable housing committee bylaws. Bo, are you going to take this one?
I'm happy to, Mayor.
Thank you.
So this is a follow-up on the special meeting that we had in April with Wetterhorn Homes. And one of the components is with respect to management of the lottery system and the Wetterhorn Homes deed restriction requirements. There was the creation of this workforce and affordable housing committee. And when we introduced a resolution creating that committee in April, another component was getting some bylaws in place. So before you in the packet are draft bylaws. They're bylaws in the truest sense in terms of outlining procedural matters for the operation of the committee, recognizing that the council members are the members of the committee, as was envisioned with the adopting resolution. And then there's some bullet points in terms of the charges that have been put forth for the committee itself in terms of pursuing affordable housing opportunities, undertaking the regulation and undertaking the regulation of the deed restriction and the affordable housing programs in place, such as Wetterhorn. So that's the big picture, and I'm happy to answer any specific questions that the council might have.
Thanks, Paul. Anyone on council have comments or questions? It's pretty tight. Yeah, pretty straightforward. Anybody in the audience have any comments or questions? Or on Zoom?
Is it something that's viewable?
Question, can you
Look at.
put it up? It was in the packet that we distributed online.
Does the deed restrictions have a cap?
It doesn't, this document doesn't address that. All this document does is create a committee that's going to be the town's entity that manages our affordable housing. And actually I'm pretty sure once we start getting deed restrictions, they're going to be handled, well, like the Wetterhorn Homes ones are going to be handled by an entity that they've hired. Other ones going forward might be handled by the Home Trust, for instance. So far, we don't have a housing authority in the county. There's been discussions about that back and forth for years, and I think the time may come where that's called for, but the cost and bandwidth required to do that is just not there yet. So yeah, this committee just is something that was needed to be created to help us administer the Wetterhorn Homes project initially, and may give us other roles going forward. But
So with regards to that particular project, item 5 or B, I guess, section 2, this committee says hosting all applicable housing lotteries. Is that in conflict with the current plan that they're essentially running the lottery process?
No, because the lottery has to be done in a duly noticed meeting of the board. So we'll talk about that later during the manager's report, or we can just talk about it now. But the lottery is taking place on June 15th at noon. So and Paul and Lois reviewed that at the last meeting. So I need to send out some calendar entries, but wanted to remind you all tonight that we have that date coming up, potentially exception hearings for appeals, etc. So again, we can go over that later, or if you have questions about it now, we can, but
so the operable word is hosting, which means that it's effectively becomes part of
what it's referring to is the actual drawing of the lottery. The lottery is open now, and they're handling that.
the application, the lottery application process is open.
But when we actually sit down and pick the lottery winners, that's done by us.
I see.
Which certainly wasn't clear during that meeting that would be hosted by the board, which is, it's fine. I think this kind of goes back to this project being the biggest deed restriction thing that we've done in Ridgway. I feel like sometimes I'm a little bit blind. But that's not deed restrict, that's not deed restrict. So sometimes I felt like going in a little blind. When do the deed restrictions have, like all of these pieces on what we're doing? So hopefully it gets easier after this first go round.
We're going to learn a lot through this process for sure. Okay. Any other comments, questions? Is there a motion approved?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Russ, seconded by Terry. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, council.
Yeah, thanks, Bo. That takes us to item number 15, discussion regarding dedicated revenue source for addressing housing challenges. Preston.
Thank you, Mayor. So last month, y'all held a work session. We continued discussing, evaluating strategies for a dedicated revenue source for affordable housing, and pointed at not only the master plan, but in the town strategic plan over the last few years. It's been a long time coming. Council, you all provided the following direction. It's outlined in the memo before you. I'm just going to review that and then turn it over to you all. Number 1, focus efforts on the lodging tax rate and the associated earmark percentages. 2, research existing lodging tax rates in other communities. 3, further explore an inclusionary zoning fee in lieu that would allow developers looking to construct market rate housing developments to either provide on-site affordable units or pay fees in lieu thereof. And 4, further explore an affordable housing mitigation fee similar to the town of Telluride's fee, which Mr. Ben Jackson had given us some information about during that meeting. So staff did make some attempts to hit on that direction. Hopefully you had a chance to read the staff report. Happy to answer any specific questions you all have at this point. But for now, staff is looking for further direction from you all on the overall initiative.
I have a question. In your research on the other communities, you list a table here of the various percentages they're using. Do you know offhand if they have, like we're planning to do, dedicated any particular partitioning of that for affordable housing or any other purpose? For example, if you're a 3.5%, we know that they also have a short, what's the short-term rental
Excise tax, like 15%.
Right. So that appears the lodging tax is low, but they have this additional tax that they may use for that purpose.
For that particular purpose. Lodging tax is not, the 3.5% is not.
Right. My point being that 3.5% sounds small, but they have other revenue generating means. This would be our only affordable housing generation means if we only did the lodging tax increase. Correct. Right.
That made, the way you put that made sense to me, yes.
Okay.
I mean, assuming we don't go for any of the other options.
Right.
I think my guess is we're gonna look at other options though.
Okay.
There was a lot of interest in the Telluride model.
But not as an either or, but maybe
No.
as a. Right.
Yes,
No,
and we're in a yes,
In
and.
addition to, yeah, I think we're looking, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, but I think we're looking for as many pieces of the puzzle as we can.
Right. This is just the first step.
Correct. So anybody else have anything they want to throw out based on this most current memo? And after we hear from council, I'll open it up for comments from the audience. And see if we can't come up with some updated direction for staff.
Preston, I'm a little confused on the Montrose sales, but Montrose rates, because they have a sales tax rate, they may not be calling it a lodging tax, but they're charging 9.43% as sales tax on lodging or hotels. So we're just, so I guess what I'm saying is kind of the idea, and I think this goes to what Terry was saying, is our idea was trying to get a grip on how our lodging taxes are going to compare to other communities to get an idea what the impact to our lodging businesses would be. So I think, which is not to criticize how you broke it down, because that's really hard to do. Like the fact that they're calling a 0.9% lodging tax. The fact is the sales tax in Montrose on lodging and hotel establishments is 9.43%.
But our sales tax is
3 points.
And we charge that on the lodging as well? Okay, I'm sorry, maybe I just pay things that I don't pay attention to. Taxes, which is what I think the argument for raising our lodging tax.
Yeah,
is.
sorry. So yeah, to make a good point, we could be a little more clear in the whole portfolio as it relates to what lodgers have to pay.
Yeah, and lodging tax, the lodging tax is just one part of the tax that any person who rents a room in town of Ridgway pays. They pay sales tax.
Because that's part of it, right? What we don't want someone to do is be shopping around and be like, well, it's worth it to drive to Montrose because I'm gonna pay this much lower rate. Or, we don't want to drastically exceed your, we want to make sure we're staying in that realm where people are making the decision to stay in Ridgway for reasons based on what we have to offer.
Right. No, I think that's a good point. Anyone else up here? Weigh in.
On the lodging tax specifically, John, or the whole thing in
The
general?
whole thing, the whole memo.
The more I read about the affordable housing mitigation fee, the more interesting that is to me. What I really appreciate about that is it provides an incentive to build reasonable sized homes that even as market rate housing continues to increase in value, we aren't talking about 5,000 square foot homes that are never going to be attainable in any sort of economy to an average working person. And if you so choose to build something that is large and out of proportion with the community character that we've espoused in our community plan, then you pay for the privilege of doing so, or you provide long-term rental housing in the space of an ADU in perpetuity. I think there's a lot of things there that really allow us to put forth some of our efforts in our master plan that we've spoken about.
I agree. I think that particular option holds a lot of potential in my view.
I still struggle with the fee in lieu because of the cost of where things are right now. It just seems really hard to scale to actually getting housed. I still am struggling with what that's actually going to look like. I feel like the more I read about it, I'm like, I get it, but I don't fully get it. I think the housing mitigation fee, it's on each individual build versus just subdivisions. We're looking for, you know, an ADU on any single family home. If you don't want to pay a fee, you're either going to be a reasonable size, or you're going to provide housing, or you're going to pay a fee to every single family home.
Yeah, I agree. I think the biggest problem for me with the inclusionary zoning fee in lieu is kind of like you said, just how exactly that's going to work. I'd be a whole lot more in favor of it if there was some way to require that a developer that wants to pay a fee in lieu instead of actually providing deed restricted units in their project, that we could turn around and use those fees to build units in their project so that there still would be units in their project. And my concern all along has been that I don't know how we would do that. I'm not sure there's precedent for being able to require that when the in lieu of the fee in lieu of is a kind of an opt-out option for them. So and I know you thought at one point that was possible. And I know if that I couldn't find anything addressing that in the things that you shared. I appreciate you sharing all that. You searched it. You couldn't find what? The idea of addressing the idea of a developer choosing to pay in lieu of fee instead of actually providing deed restricted units, but then we can turn around and require that those fees and any other fees we garnered to build the units in that project.
I think my worry with that, John, is we've seen this with our projects over by the library. If someone's building a higher end development, getting a deed restricted unit that stays in a range that's actually attainable may or may not work. So yes, we can then, are we gonna then have to put cash in addition to their in lieu to build something within their development? Like, I will.
If they pay us an in lieu with all the DOLA money that's out there for affordable housing, why can't we take that fee in lieu and some DOLA money? And we could afford to have some built.
I'm just saying, we're gonna have to subsidize it at some point, because when they came to us and said, we have a 3-bedroom deed restricted unit, it's gonna be, what was it, $870,000? Like,
that's
worrisome. Like, cool, congratulations, we get a sticker for having a deed restricted unit, but that's not actually something a family's gonna be able to live in. So, whereas, I mean, the issue with, on the flip side is I'm arguing for an affordable housing mitigation fee is an ADU isn't necessarily a home a family can live in. It can take pressure off the market for couples or single people, but it's not necessarily going to provide that. So it's the flip side of what are you getting that's actually useful to solving the problem. But again, I think it's the trigger that we want to build things that might be attainable. Yes, we have some townhomes that sold for 900,000 plus. Those are probably never going to be attainable, but a 5,000 square foot home is really, really, really never going to be attainable.
So I would argue that there's no such thing as market rate affordable housing stuff.
No, but I think as we think over the really long term and housing being something that hopefully is around in the decades, if taxing structures change the federal, like as maybe larger structural changes happen, but a really, really large home is never going to return to that stock of just people living in a community.
Right. Sorry.
So a separate question, in lieu of the fee in lieu, what is the difficulty or what is the mechanism for upping the percentage of required deed restricted from 10 to 20 or 10 to 15, round it up or whatever, but let's make it happen.
Just regulatory.
Yeah, so I mean, we have that flexibility.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that may be a simpler way of ensuring more affordable housing. It doesn't change the calculus in here and some of the mechanisms for requiring that.
And so besides with the in lieu, besides just them having to pay a fee, you can make the fee to where it's not practical for them to pay a fee. Therefore requiring this zone on site. That's option one. Option two is you can say, okay, you don't want to put it here, put it somewhere else, but they still have to build it. They have to acquire the land, they have to build it. And that's a requirement that we can just lay down as part of the rules. And it's always been, you want to play, you got to pay. We're just changing those rules now. Okay,
And who creates those rules? We or
we do, yeah, we do. It's strictly up to us.
Can I piggyback on that?
Yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, we just heard Katie talk about that section that's earmarked, section 7.7 affordable housing. And Russ, we've had some conversations. I'm trying to say, once we get past chapter 7, we're going to pick up on this affordable housing section, which I think the fee in lieu mitigation fee fits really well with that conversation. And having TJ, Katie, maybe some outside consultants come in to talk about different models, and I use the word scenarios, that's not the right one, but formulas and different mechanisms that perhaps we haven't even talked about yet that could just be another mechanism for us to have codified in the code for when the right time comes. And so I just wanted to offer, because not everyone's been involved in every conversation, but the fee in lieu mitigation fee and some others that we haven't thought of, that's coming up here very, very soon. And I think there's merit to everything that's been mentioned so far, especially fee in lieu. TJ and Katie for sure have some thoughts on that, and it'll be a very, very great and robust conversation. So I just wanted to, so that I don't want to take away
for
from
clarification of these other mechanisms don't require a ballot measure, only the lodging tax does.
That's correct.
These are just
That's
rates.
I do want to point out to this group, because we've dealt with infrastructure costs on projects. If we push to charging, making 20% of development deed restricted.
Which, just so everybody understands, that's what inclusionary zoning means. And actually, I don't know if you guys noticed, but the PUD section of the new chapter 7 actually has a 25% inclusionary zoning portion in it, saying that 25% of any, it's actually what I really like about this, is a tangent, sorry. But what I like about, one of the main things I like about the new code is it really disincentivizes PUDs. It tries to get developers to go through the actual regular development process and not do planned unit developments. So what inclusionary zoning means is that any subdivision or development that comes forward, if you have inclusionary zoning and it's 10%, it means that they have to provide 10% of their units as deed restricted. If it's 25%, then they have to provide 25%. So that's what you were referring to, the 20%.
Yes, so my point to that was every single development has infrastructure costs, and those are getting divided up among the units. So if you up the percentage of deed restricted units, they're going to be able to make less of that money back off of their market rate units, which could also alter that percentage and what that cost, that 3% allowable profit margin on those units. And we just want to be careful that we don't accidentally create more situations where we have deed restricted affordable housing that's not affordable. So we have to remember, we can't be like 50% of your development has to be deed restricted, because we're actually able to use those costs. So just things to be aware of, because we've already seen it with a 10% expectation. I would love as many as we can, but I want them to be meaningful.
I guess hearing a pause here in the discussion up here, maybe ask this. We've got this memo in front of us tonight. Hopefully somebody in the audience got it in the packet off the website, or we don't print packets anymore, do we? So it's hard to provide you guys with this who are in the audience. I apologize, but it is on the website. Maybe in the interest of trying to move through this, we should actually go back to the top and have the lodging tax discussion. Unless, I'll put it this way, unless any of you or potentially the majority of us think that we want to take any adjustment to the lodging tax off the table and we want to focus on these other things. If that's not the case, I think we need to probably dive into the lodging tax, because I know a lot of people here in the audience want to address that. And so what do you guys think?
Seems to me that the lodging tax needs to continue to be in there because the other two are contingent on development. If in fact a recession hits like they keep talking about for the last year.
Right.
If it does come to fruition, then there won't be any development. So it'll strictly be sales tax, lodging.
And even without recession at this point, all the numbers going into this particular year, both Colorado and national Airbnb numbers are down, VRBO numbers are down, general lodging numbers are down already. So then as we temper out what we consider in terms of potential increase, we need to temper that.
Absolutely.
Which is a good background to one of the points I was going to make on the lodging tax. This is back to this concept of one bite at the apple. You know, if I calculated backwards based on 2022 at 3.5%, that we raised 147,458, which is easy to calculate. If you look at the 7% divided by 2, you see it's the same number. And of that, 103 went to the chamber, and only 44 was for housing. So some of these options, if you look at what, regardless of the percentage, if you look at what the affordable housing would raise, 44 is the baseline currently based on 3.5% from the 2022 numbers. So if I looked at, for example, the one example that was given in the sample ballot measure of doing the 5%, that would only end up raising another 40,000 at 60%. So it's less than doubling what we're currently raising.
That does not take into account the fact that we have said we do need to discuss the weighting between tourism.
And I was just using the example 60/40, which still provides an increase to the chamber, but it only provides a $40,000 increase in affordable housing. So based on that, separate from my previous discussions on how we target the money, that I'm not going to go there. My preference would be to look at a larger bite at the apple, regardless of what percentage we look at, because we're only getting one chance to do this in the next few years. And so going through all that effort to only raise less than what we already are using seems like a kind of a small return on investment.
Well, the other options that we've been discussing, the fee in lieu, the affordable housing, the mitigation fees, those are not a bite at the public apple. That's
Right.
This body putting
And
our judgment on the line.
And that's what this discussion brought up, is that those are possible mechanisms to bolster that, but if there is but that's based on the economy, so those may not bear fruit.
I also think we have to be realistic and you know, we can't. I don't think we can expect to do something that's gonna like generate hundreds of millions of dollars.
No.
On the backs of the lodging entities in town and citizens. So, you know, while you're couching that in terms of less than doubling what we're theoretically get now, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's, you know, we're this whole discussion is about starting somewhere, getting started and generating some real monies that we can use going forward.
I did a focus group of one, my neighbor, who has, I asked him about this issue. And it's not the lodge or Chipeta, it's just somebody that rents out his second, the term.
Is ADU?
Yeah,
It's not as ADU.
Lower, you know. And I asked him, you know, how would 1, 2, 3, or 4% increase in that affect him? So I just put it on the bill, it doesn't make any difference to me. So he was not very concerned about it because what he rents for is exorbitant in my mind.
Right.
So
So it's in the noise to him.
just to pick a place to start that conversation, I think we talked about somewhere in the range of 1.5% to 2.5%. So just as to like kind of drop increase, yes. Well, so a 1.5 would take us to 5, you know, or sorry, 1.5 take us to 5. Let's say we did a 2%, which would take us to 5.5. Well, that would put us in this year somewhere in the ballpark of 90,000, like it's in the $90,000 ballpark, that's not an insignificant amount of money. If we go back and look at 2020, which even in the space of a recession, I think we could point it as being a pretty low point. We were seeing maybe less traveling, at least for the first third of the year, somewhere in that ballpark. Now we're looking at somewhere in the order of $60,000, which is still in the event of, I'm looking at a 60-40 split, because I think that's a conversation we need to be having. Which would be, yeah, I don't know. I think that's a place where I would like to start that conversation, is taking us back to those proposed increases we talked about, and also reopening the conversation around what those splits should be.
Because the more you raise the absolute percentage, the easier it is to go to a lower split, like a 50-50, still provide the chamber a significant increase in the process. And raise more for affordable housing. So I was looking at the 6 to 7%.
And I would like to be clear that I am asking the community, if I go to the community and I am asking for an increase in taxes for affordable housing, I would like to see the increased tax really, really go to affordable housing versus increasing the chamber budget. Just, as we think about that, when we think about kind of the dollar amount or the percentage that the chamber is getting, I really want to see that increase be applied to affordable housing. And I haven't done the math on that, I'm sorry, on how that would actually break out as a split of the lot tax as a whole. But I think it would be a very tough sell to our community that we're raising your taxes to bring more visitation into this community right now. We want to maintain what we're doing in terms of supporting our businesses. But the reason we're coming to you for a tax increase is because we want people to be able to live here.
To be clear, we're not raising taxes on our residents.
Right, no, but we're still asking for a tax increase in the community that's gonna affect businesses.
Yeah, so I guess what I'd say now, having you guys, the audience, having heard the thinking up here to this point, I'd like to give you guys an opportunity to weigh in and give us your thoughts, both on Zoom and here in the room. I'd like to, we've got a number of people here, so I'd like to keep it to like 5 minutes, but Bob.
Thank you, John, and thanks for the opportunity. Bob Kelly with Cow Creek Suites over in Palomino Trail. We have 2 short-term rentals over there, which is a commercial zone. I guess I haven't read the letter. Is the thinking still to just focus on short-term rentals as opposed to the entire lodging business in Ridgway?
No, it's looking at lodging in general. Every lodging entity would have this.
Yeah, I think then if that is the case, I think most short-term rental owners are going to be fine with a an increase of that magnitude that you're talking about. It's not insignificant, but if it's applied throughout the lodging business, I think you get a lot of support for that.
Okay, great.
So that's what I wanted to give you.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you. And specifically, you were speaking to the 1.5% that we were using as a potential.
Yeah.
But still knowing that it could be higher than that, because that's not a discussion.
And I heard mention of the excise tax in your area. That's a disaster. I can tell you right now. They're already feeling the effects of it. And they had specific problems they had to address, major problems with infrastructure there that they felt they couldn't go to the hotel motel industry there. Personally, I think it's just because that's who runs URA, and that's a situation they have to deal with. I don't think we have that here, and I'm real happy to hear that you're looking at it as a true lodging tax.
So if rather than 1.5%, it was 2.5%, making it a total of 6, what's your perspective on that? Is that significant to your business or to your?
Well, we've had to raise our rates. We have by far the most affordable short-term rentals in town.
How would you raise your rates or just add that tax to the bill?
Well, we can't,
You don't itemize it?
no, actually,
Well, the
another,
tax gets added to
It
the.
has,
yeah, but another complication is that VRBO does not quote or collect that tax. We have to do that directly. I don't know what the problem is. And we've, looked into that in the past, and for some reason, VRBO can't do it. I don't know if Airbnb has the same issue. We don't advertise.
Pay lodging tax, they only collect sales
Yeah.
tax.
So, the more that tax increases, and it's always sticker shock, when we send a quote out, or I should say when VRBO sends a quote out based on our rates, that's never included. They don't have the ability to quote that.
That's interesting. Airbnb has started quoting the entire fee when you go to Airbnb and look for a place. I've noticed, and VRBO does not do that. So it's
Airbnb is
they've
quoting the lodging.
it's like they're trying to make it a sales point, I think, is to say, we show you all the fees right up front.
Interesting.
It is interesting because
They can do it, but VRBO can't.
I don't
But they're not.
They're not
collecting
collecting.
them all.
Yeah.
Oh,
They
no.
don't collect every net, Airbnb.
Well, it sounds like a problem.
Or VRBO.
Anyway, yeah, it's,
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, it's a little bit of, when I say the lodging tax is not really an issue, but it makes that issue bigger. We have to, after we get the booking, we've got to explain, that the RBO doesn't collect the lodging tax. We have it in the rental agreement, but 90% of the people aren't going to read the rental agreement before they book. So we've got to go through that process, and, it doesn't reflect well. I've said this before, it really doesn't reflect well on Ridgway. It's not so much a problem with the rental companies, but it is an issue. So I just put that out there. Something to think about. But thanks for that.
But that's an issue today regardless if the rate goes up or not.
Yeah, it would just be a little bigger issue.
Sure. Understood.
It's a sticker shock, it's anywhere from 30 to 50 bucks on top of the bill.
Right.
That was not in the quote from VRBO, so.
Seems
And
like that's also not a problem that only Ridgway would be having, like that's gonna be true. Across the board.
It's unique to Ridgeway as far as I know.
I'm always shocked by how much the fees are.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and they've tried to, as Expedia bought VRBO, and they're all trying to monetize this vacation rental thing. So the longer they have the business, the more their fees are going up. It's, we're getting it from everywhere. So,
Right.
it's something to be aware of, that lodging tax is a separate item that people get hit with after they've booked. It's really a problem. But I don't think anybody would have an issue as long as it's across the lodging. Okay, so thanks for doing that.
Sure, thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, come on. Ashley.
So I'm just looking at page 267, the chart that kind of distinguishes the different percentages. I noticed it didn't include the 3.5, which we're currently collecting. Just kind of starts at the 4%, which I think is definitely okay. It's just kind of the chart I think is a little misleading in regards to I think the most important, kind of piggybacking off of what Beth said, is to pay attention to the 2020 numbers specifically, because that is the most accurate to date amount of revenue I think the lodging tax has been historically bringing in. According to my records, I have back to 2018 lodging tax total between town and chamber collected about just under 80,000. So those numbers for 20 and I think 2019, 2020 was around 23,000 each of those years. So yeah, the 2021, 2022 numbers I think are just slightly misleading. I just want to mention that.
You think they're misleading because
they're
artificially inflated somehow, or?
I think the pandemic brought a lot of people into the community.
We also been discovered, so I mean, it's hard to, we won't know until a couple more years whether it's just a matter of that we have been discovered and people are going to be coming more, but it's a point well taken.
And also like just in regards to the potential of a recession that affects the chamber's budget as well.
So the 3.5% numbers on 2022, if you calculate it, was 103 to the chamber and 44 to affordable housing. Is that consistent with your counting?
That seems right.
That's closed, yeah, sorry, I didn't have that. completely.
It would have been helpful to set three.
Yeah, we
100.
extrapolated it out. About 5%. But yeah, I think that's a good point about 21, 22 as it relates to 2020.
That's all I know.
Pretty big jump between 20 and 21, 22. So
What I've been gathering from projections across the board, across the country, is that this year's, the given rate right now going into summer is more akin to 2019. And if you look at it, when they say we're going to be down by 30 to 40% of bookings, it's based upon the 20 and 21. So we're looking more at 2019 as the baseline to work off of. So in the context of trying to propose a tax in that context, I think it's apt to keep in mind that we might be in a 2019 scenario.
It is also important to remember though that the lot tax is split between tourism and affordable housing, and affordable housing will take a hit as well if things go down and people still need places to live. So we're trying to balance those two competing interests.
As is in the real-time marketplace, the service industry will have to balance it out as well with less demand.
right.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thanks, Ashley.
So as far as numbers go, we're at 3.5% now, and we're at 70-30. That means like 2.45% go to tourism, and 1.05% go to affordable housing. We increase by 1.5% and go to a 50-50 split that essentially actually slightly increases the ever so slightly, like 0.01%. Like increases the chamber's budget, but that actually keeps of the percentage being charged, that keeps the percentage the same for the chamber while adding or more than doubling the percentage that would be applied to affordable housing. So just as a space of thinking about what that looks like.
So you're saying the offset would get us to a point where
They can change their percentage.
Well, that it would change the percentage, but still that would give them the benchmark to the budget.
Right, you're actually benchmarking on the same percentage of a room cost as you have been.
Okay, Tanya.
Great, Tanya Ishikawa. So I wanted to start with, this is amazingly complicated affordable housing financing, so I really appreciate that you're doing it. I've been trying to stay out of the discussion, but then have been pulled in since I'm with the chamber. So I really appreciate that you're considering many options. I'm not quite sure if lodging tax was, would be like the correct option, because towns like Montrose, Telluride, they spend a lot on their tourism promotion / business and economic development or support, and those are eternally necessary things for those for every community to support financially. And so and affordable housing, we agree, is also something more and more necessary to support, but I think perhaps other funding streams. I wanted to mention the comparison of other towns' percentages of lodging tax. I do think that it would be great to sooner than later include the other things like excise tax. I think even Mountain Village might have a resort fee. Like there's other fees that are that tourists have to pay when they stay at lodging in other communities that changes that that equation quite a lot. So that should be considered when comparing. But of course, since like I was saying, a chamber or business promotion entity is really important, as long as what the town is spending currently, and it's currently on the chamber, but could be really on any organization. We're going to be doing that contract again this year, and we hope to keep it. We've been doing lots of new activities to prove our worth. But as long as we keep at least a minimum of what we have now, because truly the chamber's been operating, a few years back, it was the board who operated everything, a free volunteer board. We switched it over to contractors, and then we're paying contractors, not their health insurance,
not like their retirement, nothing like that. So contractors who are barely, anyway, who are not supported as a full, paid employee. So now we have a paid employee, and just to even, pay our paid employee plus all the activities that we do really does take what we have now. So I appreciate the concern and care not to lower our budget at all. I think I had one more point. And in talking to lodging and other businesses, they definitely value having an organization promote them. And they said, if we had all of our rooms booked up year round, and if there was a waiting list, then we don't need the promotion anymore. But we obviously need the promotion because there's parts of the year that we don't even fill half our rooms, or it's hard to fill half our rooms. So even though we have such a high amount of tourism in the summer and in general year round than we've had in the past, there's still lots of opportunity for business promotion in our town. Thank you.
Thanks, Tanya. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Pam.
I don't know if this has come up on the choice of options or other things.
Excuse me, can I get your name, please?
Pam Foister.
Thank you.
Aspen charges a 1% real estate transfer tax that goes directly to their affordable housing.
We can't.
We can't.
The Tabor Amendment went into place and basically grandfathered places like Telluride and Aspen that had real estate transfer taxes, but they outlawed them going forward. Something I've been pushing for years, and there's interest, but the state is like moving boulders up the hill, is to go to the voters of the state to try and get Tabor amended to allow real estate transfer taxes only for affordable housing. And there is interest in that, but I haven't been able to get anybody to draft it.
Interesting. I didn't realize it was blocked at the state level because I thought it was a local.
No, it's
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's unfortunate because Telluride and Aspen definitely benefit from that usually. Yeah. I wish we would have done it before Tabor, but that was a long time ago. Tim.
Yeah, Tim Patterson with Riggs Flash Up here in town, and served previously as chamber president. And I've run my business for over 20 years here, so I feel I have some good perspective on this. And I wanted to start by saying I don't envy your position. This is a challenging decision and topics and needs for the community. And so I wanted to speak to, though, affordable housing and what is affordable housing. Is affordable housing obtainable? And I think you said that to some extent, John, versus maybe workforce housing that would help supplement the business community to, actually produce these revenues and this product that we offer are very different things. I think we all just saw our property valuation notices and dramatic increases there. I don't know how that doesn't fall hand in hand with where we're at with valuations of affordable housing. So it's exponentially grown out of control. I don't think we can escape that. I think that's just reality. I prefer the term, workforce housing as a reality for anyone that could really afford to live here and have a job here. I mean, some of us are fortunate enough to have a year-round stable income with benefits in Ridgway, but I would say that is a minority. If tourism is truly the generator of our economy here, which I'm not sure it quite is in Ridgway, but that's different. It's to Tanya's point, that's very seasonal in nature. There's the majority of the year where businesses struggle, close, those gaps aren't filled just by heavy visitation in the summer. I also wanted to reiterate JT's point that the true numbers and metrics are more realistic to 2019, pre-pandemic. That was a bubble that is proving and trending that way, and certainly felt and absorbed in my business, and I'm sure others would echo that too. We got to be cautious there in these economic times, and recession, I think, is real. The cost of goods in general, as they go up, and also increase and inflate the prices that we have to charge, that's absorbed by us. That's just not raw profit that we're collecting. That's just part of doing business. So I'm concerned about that. The lot fund being the target for what would be determined as affordable housing. I don't think we're ever going back to affordable housing here. Comments into regards of we've been discovered. Well, certainly all of Western Colorado, if not the whole state, has been discovered. Our unique challenges are different in that. I would also beg to say that we've been discovered as a great place for second homeowners. We've been discovered as a great place for those that work in Telluride that can't afford to live there anymore, that this is a more obtainable community. And those discoveries are every bit as powerful as, tourism, or what's perceived as this never-ending stream. And again, the trending as we move into this year very much speaks to 2019 or before. It'd be a mistake, I think, to ride those bubbles. I never really saw Ridgway as a big tourism community, really, more of a livable community, is what I term it, with the benefits of a beautiful place that draws people. But we certainly, as businesses like ours gravitate off what Telluride is, what Ridgway is, and the synergy around us versus what we are exclusively as a tourism spot. In regards to the lot fund, I really did want to advocate to keep the percentages the same. I think the intent with the initial ballot was very much to support tourism. And the 30%, I want to remind you, was also termed, correct me if I'm wrong, to mitigate the impacts of tourism. It was never written in anywhere that it was exclusively a fund dedicated towards affordable housing. That's new to me. I've never seen any report or metric that spoke to the 30% as to how it was allocated over time. And suddenly when it switched to affordable housing is the only thing we think about. So I'm concerned about that. I would advocate for, as cost of goods go up, as we enter recession potentially and difficult times, that the budget needs to be consummate with that and increase for the chamber, as it does for everything else we do and everything else we charge. So I would be mindful of that. I think taking from that to term it as affordable housing with so many additional things coming before you to address this problem that are yet to be defined would be a little preemptive. So I really just wanted to advocate for the community, the business community in particular, the different challenges that we inherit. I do think there's some cost shopping that people will do as a byproduct of this. Maybe lodging can speak to that more, but I would request that you keep it the same and that you look elsewhere in addition for what affordable housing means. And if the 30% was somehow intended for affordable housing, I'd love to see the history of what became of 30% over the last, how long has this ballot been in place? 15 years? A long time. So thanks for listening. I'm always open to answer any questions or interact with you guys as part of the community. Our doors are always open. So
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Richard, welcome.
Richard Weber. I have to agree with what Tim said. I think he made a lot of really good points. I think the chamber is a very valuable group. We have to realize that, Ridgway has really evolved in the last, 10 years, especially since I graduated high school. It's went a lot of places. But I think the chamber is very important, and they are speaking for, all these businesses that are in town, and, without tourism, a lot of these businesses wouldn't survive. They really wouldn't, so when you start trying to pull money from them, to give it towards something else, I do think that that could be a problem. And the other thing that we got to realize, I mean, what is, inflation been in the last year or two? It's huge, so I don't think that, I don't think increasing the lodging tax would be a terrible idea. If it's the 3.5, whether it go up, a 1.5 or 2.5, to make it, maybe 5 or 6. I don't think that's a terrible idea because, I mean, realistically, when people are coming to this town, or if they're going to go down and they're going to stay with Chris, or they're going to come in on VRBO and they're going to book somewhere, nobody's going to turn away because of, a couple bucks on taxes. Now, do the fees add up? Sure. But when people are making that vacation, they're already committed, they're doing the trip, they're going to do it anyways. It's not like they're going to turn away because, or they're not going to go to Ridgway because our lodging tax might be 2% higher, than somebody else. So I don't think that, increasing the percent is bad, but when you increase it and then you start pulling from the chamber, I think that it could really be a problem, and also because the chamber is doing so much for events, I'll speak for Rodeo Association and for ski touring. Both of those groups, they put on an event a year, and without people showing up, like those events don't happen, and ski touring is evolved into almost, maybe the biggest event in the county. And we want all those people to come out, we have, 5,000 people to show up now, but would it be great if 10,000 showed up? Absolutely. I would love it. It would be great, because it's only going to be better for our town and our community and even Ridgway in our county, and chamber can be a big part of that. They've helped us in the past. And I think that they have more money, they have more resources, they can help more. And anytime that they are helping events, you bring people to town. And the town is doing really, really well. You're packing every restaurant, the gas stations are full, all the lodges are full, all the rentals are full. Like it's really important, so, and I am kind of curious with what Tim was saying, I don't know a whole lot about this, so I'm kind of speaking in the dark, but I'd be curious to see like the ear tag on that other 30%, did that just show up or has that been there a while? I don't know. I would be very curious about that. Because I know sometimes things like that can just kind of like, oh, well, here's this 30%. Well, let's just throw this on this, and where it's not really proper. So I really agreed with what he said on that. So yeah, I think it should stay. I don't think that it would be bad increasing the percent, but I think cutting it from 70 to 30 or cutting the 70-30 to 60-40 or 50-50 could be a big mistake.
Let me offer an example, and it's a question between these relative percentages and absolute dollars. I mean, if the objective is to maintain a healthy budget for the chamber in terms of absolute dollars, just looking at the chart based on the 2022 numbers, now that's not taking the 2019 situation into account, but if we were to raise the lodging tax to 6%, we went to a 50-50, it would represent a 25% increase to the chamber and a threefold increase to the affordable housing.
Going off 2019 number?
No, this is all.
It actually just doesn't matter on the percentages.
Yeah.
If we increase 1.5% and we go to a 50-50 split, the chamber essentially
gets a raise.
But it's pretty much a wash.
Well, no,
Numbers,
well, on two numbers.
doesn't matter.
No,
On
the wash. So,
it's a
yeah,
wash.
but what
So
about?
actually, so that what I'm saying is then we go to if we went to a 6%, so we went at 2.5% increase and kept 50-50, then they would actually increase in the amount.
And that's
that
the
they were
example I was
taking in.
using. So it would be a 25% increase in the chamber budget and a threefold increase to our choice to allocate the remainder to affordable housing.
I don't think it's an increase or a problem increasing the chamber. Because there are more things that are starting to happen. They have more.
No, I'm.
Yeah, we're on the same team. No, I think clarifying that a change in the percentage does
I get
not
that.
equal a cut to the chamber. Yeah, that was what we were saying.
But you're indicating it equals the baseline.
Yeah, it equals, but so then now.
No, that's only the 5%. Let me just repeat that example. If we raised it from 3.5 to 6%, again, based on, you can take any year you want, but based on 2022, it would be 126,000 going to chamber instead of 103. So that's a 25% increase. And on the other side, this is at the 50-50 ratio. So my point is that I'm not sure the ratio is as important as the absolute dollars, assuming that we raise the tax, by 1.5%, 2.5%. But in that example, if we raise it to 2.5%, got to 6% lodging tax, the budget for the chamber based on 2022 would go from 103 to 126 in 2023. So it'd be a 25% increase in absolute dollars, even though we changed the ratio.
I think it's important to look at the numbers for 2019.
We don't have.
Well, but that's why I'm
2020.
that's why I'm trying to couch things in terms of a percentage, right?
It's still have the same relative.
70% of 3.5% is 2.45%.
Yeah, but what percentage increase did the town just gain?
Well, that was actually, no, hold on. What I was saying is 70% of 3.5%, so status quo is 2.45%. If we increase by 1.5% to 5%, a 50-50 split is 2.5%. So essentially your percentage is essentially a wash at a 50-50. If we go to it.
Yeah, and I don't think that'd be enough.
If we go to a 2.5.
Because we're free at inflation.
And then we go to 6%, now you've gone from 2.45 to 3% of you know what I mean, of a room's cost coming to the chamber, which is why I'm proposing we couch it in terms of percentages, because we are trying to track this from 2019 to 2022 and all of those ranges. And in a recession, regardless of how we pick the numbers, whether it's 50-50 or 70-30 or 70 affordable, 30 chamber, like everyone's going to take a hit in the event that there is a recession, all pieces of this. So I think it's important.
In summarizing that simply, trying to summarize simply, if we went to a 50-50 split, we raised the tax from 3.5 to 6, it would represent an increase in the budget of the chamber.
Right.
Not an equal 5% is status quo.
Yeah.
On the tax.
Yeah.
These are numbers are confusing. So, throwing that out as a baseline for discussion, I suggest we raise 2.5% to 6%, we go to 50-50. That represents an increase to the budget of the chamber relative, depending on whichever numbers you use, it's a relatively 25% increase to the chamber of absolute money, of absolute dollars.
And that wasn't in 2020 though, because if you look at 2020, the 76,000, because we don't have to pay 0.5%, but even if you look at the 76,000, that's a 70%. And you go over to the 50% column, it only goes up to 81,000.
Right, still an increase.
But if there's a recession, there will be losses to the community as a whole. Like we can't set it. There's no way I can make it where you don't take a loss if a recession happens, unless I increase we go beyond 70-30 and you take 80%. Like I can't. This body can't adjust for national economic conditions.
It's got to be reciprocity in the numbers. They've got to be, we both got to.
We're both going to lose if something goes down and we're all both.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, we're going back and forth on the percentages, which we've discussed before, 10% cut here, going back to 50-50. But in the bigger history of it all, it used to be 30-70, and then it was flipped. And this may be a question for Pam. Where does it, is it in our laws that we have to make a split of a percentage? Or could we instead just identify a 5-year plan where we guarantee them that at their current level of what they receive, that we could then increase that over 5 years? Why do we live by this percentage? Is it mandated?
There was a valid question that said that.
But it establishes the lodging tax was done it didn't say it would go to the chamber. It says it goes to market.
To answer Richard and Tim's question about the 70-30 split, the actual quote from the November 2015 ballot question is up to 70% of the proceeds of the lodging tax will be used for tourism and promotion and economic development, and the remainder will be used for expenses attributable to tourism and growth. Very vague, but you could argue that that's, I mean, what over the years since we've had the lodging tax at all, the dollars have mostly gone to like things like sidewalks and
repairing sidewalks, landscaping. things like that. So I must have missed something, but yeah, the remaining 30% does not go towards anything other than mitigating the effects of tourists.
And the reason that this memo talks about affordable housing is because we'd have to craft a new ballot question that would say from now going forward, we're going to take that whatever percentage it is, 30%, 40%, 50%. And it will be to go towards our affordable housing.
And I've also said, I'm just gonna repeat it for this group of people who are here. I think as we go to voters and we ask for money for affordable housing, we need to be really clear what we spend it on. And we have since in the last, was it 2 years ago, Pam, we made a line item in the budget for affordable housing. So we'll make it really easy for us at the end of a budget year for Pam to say, this is what we spent those affordable housing dollars on now that we have done that. So in the event that we were to go to voters and pass this, I have really, really advocated for that we need to be, we paid tap fees, we pay, we matched a grant, we want to be clear where those are going.
And I think we're all universal on that.
Yeah, I think that's
based upon our previous discussion.
I think that's part and parcel of the promises this body needs to make if we're asking for money for affordable housing.
Does the city garner any of the county taxes associated with valuations, or is that all that we've just received?
That's a really good question. I mean, we have
Go ahead.
we have a mill levy that's a part of that, we're involved in that. So based on the new evaluations, the town will see some increases based on that.
Is that a possibility of a source? I'm just looking at trying to, other ideas that seem to still be on the table, and in fact, you seem very adamant about this position. I'm surprised.
No, this
as
one.
the liaison for the town, for the chamber, that you're so wholehearted about that.
Well, my concern with going to the property taxes and asking for a mill levy increase is I think we're gonna have a lot of people in this community who are looking at their property taxes going.
No, I think he's saying.
Yeah, well,
She's addressing her concerns about that in relation
yeah,
to this.
so, I think part of this and part of what I have said repeatedly throughout this process is we have to find a way to balance charging our residents and increasing the cost of living here. We had talked about a sales tax at one point. And we said, we would really like to see people shifting their purchasing to URA County as much as possible. If I pay 10% more, but I shop at a local business, I would like to be able to do that. But if I'm adding a sales tax, then maybe it makes it, I've lost that margin to do that. So we talked about that cost. We talked about short-term rental cost, and we ran into some issues with people trying to rent spare rooms and the people who are owner occupied, right? So everything's gonna have a downside. Ultimately, we came to the lodging tax, and I've come to the lodging tax in terms of we're trying to balance the effects of growth and visitation to our housing costs. Those second homeowners, how do we balance those costs? We explored a vacant home tax and had some concerns about the legalities of that. So there's gonna be a balance, if we're charging.
And what is the smartest way to spend $100,000 town's money that we have?
It seems like law was specifically collected for visitors, not residents. Okay, so to reinvest that into the community for those effects and continue tourism and staying at the lodge seems pretty symbiotic for taking what is generated from those efforts and then reapplying them towards affordable housing, which has nothing to do with tourism.
Well, that's not true, Tim. That's not true.
Well, maybe not nothing, but they're starting different.
And I also think that what I'm hearing is that there's this concern out there that what we're talking about is taking money away from the chamber. We're not talking about taking money away from the chamber.
Well,
we want to make
keeping a baseline as proposed in most recent. It seems inequitable.
I agree with that statement.
Tim, how many members does the chamber have of local businesses in town?
About 70.
About 70. What has been the trend over the last 5 years? Has that grown over time? Has that decreased?
Do you recall what the chamber membership was when you were president?
I don't know.
I would assume it's been about the same, and it takes them about roughly 14.
And I think that this information is important because this is a complete opportunity for the chamber to sell town council on what the chamber does to help support local businesses. So sell us. This is where we all go. This is where you're going to get your money from. What is the chamber doing? What does the chamber identify as the largest speed bump or hassle right now for businesses in Ridgway?
I think economics, I think the dismantling of Ridgway County as a symbiotic dual chamber, which was this close to happening, where both forces were combining.
Hey, Tim, can you come to the podium? So we can catch up, please.
Both those forces were on the precipice of combining their powers and rebranding us as Ridgway County. That fell apart, that fell on our laps, on a shoestring budget. That's very difficult. On what I really, and I don't think this is anyone's fault, but this is a livable community more than a tourist community in a lot of regards. We don't have the bed base to support what other towns do, or the infrastructure, honestly. So are we treading water to some extent to try and get the message across with the limited budget that we've had in place? Yes, I would say. Maybe the town should take over the chamber. What vested interest does the town have in promoting tourism, and what value do you see in tourism as a byproduct of the businesses we have here? I mean, I would put that back to you. I think this is a very modest budget for the chamber, to say the least, that commands a lot of attention and volunteer hours from people in the business community. And I think that's very healthy to serve a short term and then have another president or other board members come in is healthy. And again, we do this on a volunteer basis. We're not a committee that gets paid to be here. So yeah, I think it's a struggle. I think Ridgway is behind in its messaging, but what little resources we've had with an amazing website and try to get engagement from businesses is put forward. It's the onus on the business owner to get involved with their community. So I put it back to them.
So what does the chamber do?
What does the chamber do? It advocates, it provides a resource for shared communications, events, lodging, activities, directions, you name it. Yeah, I think it does a lot.
In the absence of an affordable housing measure, are you saying we should be going to voters asking for an increase in tourism dollars? Because if we,
No.
so, but this is the thing, right? You're not losing. If we increase by anything more than 1.5 and switch to a 50-50 split, the chamber isn't losing. So by advocating for getting any more than 50-50 in any of these things, should we be going to the voters to ask for an increase to the tourism?
You certainly can. I think it's a bad idea.
But I'm saying if
I'm proposing you
you're
don't.
saying,
I
but
think
if
it's a
you're
bad
saying
idea.
50-50 split isn't fair, we are going to the voters and asking for an increase.
Again, that's a baseline number on 2022.
No, but 2.45% is 2.45%, whether it's 2019, 2020, or 2025.
So the other thing I'd like to point out is that, I feel like I'm hearing that there's some feeling out there that, us trying to fund affordable housing is taking away from the chamber, taking away from the business community. When actually the more what you call workforce housing, which is the word I like to use as well, that we have, the more likely that local business will be able to have employees living here and not struggling to find employees. I mean,
after the valuation notice that I just received, to think that my employees at the same salaries that they're at, based on a flat line economy right now.
That's our goals. That our goal is to try and raise some amount of money to be able to support more workforce housing so that so employees can live here and businesses can have employees.
Well, let's term it that way versus affordable housing, which is,
I think that's what we have been trying to say. I mean, whether you call it affordable housing, whether you call it workforce housing, that's what we're talking about. That's what I'm trying to explain.
I don't think we're thinking of the chamber as a specific just whipping post that we're trying to milk money back out of. I mean, all of the other things that we're discussing all of the mechanisms that we're exploring. I mean, I don't even know the history of Uray and Ridgway combining, but, you know, other communities, other regions that have done that, maybe a thing called the ecological tax, where a visitor pays a one-time fee, and then for the 12 months that they return to visit, they never have to pay it again. But that money alone can then go to the workforce. So all these different mechanisms. I think what I would love to hear from the chamber is, and I've heard it in roundabout ways, is saying, and what I'm gleaning tonight is with inflation and everything else, of course, you want to have a percentage that gives you less than you currently make right now. But you guys also haven't come to us and said, we would like to see our budget go to 10% over the, you know, go up 10% to match inflation so we're not on a shoestring budget. So something proactive like that. And at the same time, that's kind of why I deflected going back to last summer, the notion that we were just going to take 10% from you guys automatically, which was going to be nothing to us and a big hit to you, so that we could continue this conversation to explore all these different mechanisms. But on the what I was also asking was that to incentivize, like, how can you guys drive more revenue within your own organization by bringing in more businesses and generating revenue, but also then coming to us and say, hey, let's collaborate, let's work on all these mechanisms together as a community. And it probably would have been an easier conversation to go to the voters if indeed the chambers were married, because they were working with the county, with the two town municipalities, and then it's easier to pitch it. And I still think there's room for that as well, not just to discuss that within the vacuum of just our single municipality. I think Uray is a different entity. We're a different entity now. I think there's a rift at that point in the ethos, but I think on that side of it, I guess that's kind of why I think this conversation has digressed so often with the chamber, with you guys, as if we're just trying to, as I think Adam had said a while ago, trying to pull, you know, blood from a stone. I don't think we're trying to do that. I think we're trying to find where we can all shift together. But if you came to us and said, you know, we want to increase our budget by whatever percentage, we're at whatever, 90,000 this year, we would like to be at 120 for next year. And then we'd have a flag in the sand. We could work toward that together. Yeah.
We are trying to grow. Hello. We are trying to grow our revenue, and it's by driving business in the off season and helping all the businesses with their challenges. And we are changing our membership model to include all the businesses in town. So right now we're at 70. We're going to have a new basic membership level that is going to increase to all businesses in town. So we're very excited about that. And while I've been listening to this dialogue, I just have to say that, you know, it's all been focused on the lodging taxes. And I think that, you know, we're not a community living in a vacuum. There are examples throughout Colorado of other rural communities that are tackling or have successfully tackled the same problem. There was an article I read on CPR's website that multiple communities have increased specifically their short-term rental rate higher than their lot taxes. And they've done that because that's the root cause of the housing problem, that the houses or the rental units that were long-term before are now rented short-term. And I think that is something that you could grow your pie for affordable housing if you collected more taxes from the short-term rentals. And that where those rentals, while they're benefiting from tourism, they did not have to build to the same standards that the hotels have to build to. They don't have commercial standards, and I don't think there'd be anything wrong with charging a little bit more for short-term rentals. And again, there are successful examples in other communities. So I think that it's important to look at the big picture. And also,
And Adam, we are looking at the big picture. We started by looking at the big picture in this memo, and then the lodging tax particular item was at the top of the memo, and I said, let's address this because there are a bunch of people in the room that want to hear our thoughts on that. It's not the only thing we're pursuing by any means. So, you know, I want you to make sure you understand that.
I totally agree with that, and I take exception to what you said there. At the beginning of this meeting, we went through 3 different options. We are talking about the lodging tax right now. We've already been through the short-term rental tax. It's an option we're not interested in pursuing. So we do have other options out here. And again, we are not trying to attack, as we've said before, the chamber, but we are looking at other options. And I'm a little upset that you actually said that this is the only thing we're looking at. So
Well, let's try not to be on either side. I understand.
And I was gonna step down. I appreciate you guys listening. I don't want it to be adversarial. It seems like it's coming from a place that is contentious with what the chamber's needs are. If those weren't expressed clearly, you know, I hope you all are involved with the business community and visit and be a board member yourself. But John knows it's been a very long history. I think John and I are probably the only ones potentially in the room that know the long history of the chamber, and that there's been adversarial things along the way and contention. We've come so far, and just wanting to be in support of dollars that tourism generates and how it affects the business community here, primarily relying on it.
We are all very aware of that, and I do just want to say this has been a 7-month process, 8-month process. That we have worked on at least once a month for that 7 months. So I'm feeling a bit of contention and a little angst.
I'm sorry to hear that. You know, what's hard in the bureaucracy of meetings that go on and agendas is they're not relative to what a business owner has to do. I don't know if any of you are business owners on the board.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, then you can respect that. If that's your sole income, how time consuming that is to, you know, be expected to make meetings and be involved to the state that you guys are in a paid position, you know, is tough. It's a big ask.
It's not, I wouldn't call it a paid position.
It's paid more than the volunteers that work at the chamber that are on that board.
So bringing it back to lodging tax, I'd like to state a quick position, partly for Tim's sake. I don't personally question the value of the chamber at all, and I also recognize.
I don't think any of us.
Yeah, I don't think that's true. And any of us, I also recognize the need to increase the amount of money to keep up with inflation. I think one of the simplest solutions based on what we're faced is if we raise the lodging tax to 6%, go to 50-50, it will increase the budget to the chamber and it will triple the amount of money we raise for affordable housing. So just using that as a baseline, 6%. Based on, if you just look at 2022, and if you did the relative numbers, it's the same.
Stop saying.
Let's try to get a relative number, but it would increase the budget to the chamber and satisfy the objective we have of raising a significant amount of money for affordable housing. That's if we chose a 6% lodging tax. Anything less than that, it doesn't achieve that. It goes more to the status quo.
That's
So,
an increase of 1 point, you're going from 2.45% to 3%.
relative.
And that's, no, that's,
Well,
that's just true in whatever economy we're in.
Right, true.
So the point is to say that the historic 30%, whatever it was used for, is now reallocated plus the addition exclusively to affordable housing.
Not reallocated, being newly earmarked, essentially.
It's not
Is that,
Yeah.
is that?
It would be part of the ballot question that we'd have to go to the voters for to do this. We're not, it's worded that way now because that's what we're discussing. It's not, nothing has shifted. We haven't shifted anything, although I would argue that you could say the impacts of tourism and growth are certainly totally related. I mean, workforce housing is absolutely part of that. There's not, you try to argue that workforce housing doesn't have anything to do with the impacts of tourism and growth on the town, and
But you would say in the new ballot measure, your consensus is that you would term it as such, that it would be for affordable housing.
Workforce housing.
I can read the example language he has here that answers your question. Or I can.
I don't
Let's-
know.
yeah.
I don't think.
I think something that we have to keep in mind here is that it's not the job of this body today to debate with individuals like what we're doing. Got your feedback. Thank you so much for sharing. Really appreciate it. Like that's the case with all of you guys, from short-term rental owners to business owners to community members. Our job then is to take all of that feedback, craft a ballot measure and sell it to the residents of Ridgway. So we're going to consider everyone, Adam, from a short-term rental operator to lodging operators to restaurants to other businesses who use tourism. We're also going to consider residents who need teachers to live in their community, who need firefighters and police members and EMS. So it's going to be a mix of, yeah, we're seeing impacts from tourism to our housing. We're also seeing impacts of people who moved here from out of state and brought more money in. We've all seen those increases in our valuations, but that impacts then governmental employees who are important, or quasi-governmental employees who are important to making the community run. So that's the role of this body, is to try to weigh all those pieces.
Yeah, I think that the short version of what Beth is trying to say is that we have to make a decision that's not going to make everybody happy. Everyone is going to have some reason to be unhappy with whatever decision we make. And we just have to find the best balance of that. And that's always, I mean, my old mentor, Don Batchelor, said, you're doing right in local government when everybody's mad at you. That's totally true. I can appreciate that. So I think Beth's point is that we have to just make a call, give direction to staff on the direction we think we want them to go. And it is multifaceted. The lodging tax is part of it, is just one part of it. I think we all have a strong interest in the affordable housing mitigation fee and also in the inclusionary zone fee in lieu of. So given that the clock keeps ticking, I think we need to try and come to an agreement up here on what we think, how we want to direct staff to move forward. Again, starting with the lodging tax, because that's the thing that would require a ballot measure. If we think we want to draft a ballot measure and take something before the voters this fall, we need to get moving on that.
Can I add one thing for the record from somebody that's sure number 10? Just get a record. Spencer Fuller texted me earlier. He wanted me to publicly say that on your behalf of the chamber as well. And as a business owner, he said, taking money from the chamber for affordable housing is not a worthwhile endeavor. I think the council should pursue grants that are available as opposed to our town's only opportunity to collectively advertise our businesses that ultimately make this town operate. Anyway, I just wanted to do him the service of getting that on the record there. And now move forward. Yeah.
All right. I would just add that in the future, we shouldn't be legislating by text message during meetings. I would just urge him to
He wanted to be here to
check in on Zoom or send an email to be texting with us individually in a meeting is questionably appropriate. And
I'll take that on my chin as a mechanism.
It's just probably best that we don't operate that way. And I understand you're a relatively new member and probably didn't think about that, but I'm sorry to chide you, but and I appreciate Spencer's comment as well.
So may I?
Yes, please.
So there were a couple suggestions so far, one from
Just a sec.
Beth and then one from Terry. The one I heard from Beth was raise revenue from tax increase to go toward affordable housing with an increase between 5% and 6%. Terry, very specific just a few minutes ago, raised to 6%, 6% and go to a 50-50 split. So based on my notes, what I recall, those are the only two somewhat proposals to go off of. It would be helpful for staff if we further the conversation on how to move this forward. We could certainly stick a pin in it. Staff could go back, look at 2019, 2018, 2017, go back a few years. I'll tell you right now, I hate spreadsheets, and even go back to 2020 was rough. But happy to do that. So that might be helpful for the purposes of the conversation. I also want to say thank you to Tanya, because Tanya, I think, has been one of the only people to characterize the relationship between the town and the chamber correctly. The dollars go towards tourism promotion. The town has contracted with the chamber to spearhead towards tourism promotion. I've heard a lot of it. It's not that it's incorrect. I'm just being nitpicky that they're chamber dollars for the chamber, it's dollars for tourism promotion that the town has chosen to contract to the chamber to spearhead those efforts. So thank you, Tom, for doing that. And thank you to everybody for participating in the conversation. So.
And I would just add that, presuming we come up with a direction to give staff tonight, it's not final. It's not, it wouldn't be the done deal, stick a pin in it, we're done. It would come up, the staff would then bring back to us some further information based on what we may suggest, and we would still have, we would still need to take a vote to actually create the ballot measure and all of that. I would just throw out an alternative. I don't know if you heard what Preston said.
No, because I'm going to excuse myself. I'm not feeling well. I'm going to have to head out for the night.
Oh, okay.
But I think my opinion, since we're not deciding anything, I think I've made my matter pretty clear.
Preston mentioned your proposal and then Terry's proposal. And I was going to throw out a third proposal, which would be to go to 6%, but make it a 60-40 split instead of a 50-50 split.
I mean, I
I was gonna say the same thing.
So Russ and I are on the same
Sorry,
page
guys.
that way. All right, feel better.
Help me get the bill.
So discuss.
There was.
No, sorry, go ahead. No, it's not a public hearing, so it's not, there's no closing it. We can continue to discuss.
In the interest of continuing input, I just wanted to address something that Adam said about short-term rentals.
I had a feeling you'd want to get up and address that.
Directly affecting the affordable housing issue here. I don't think there's one approved short-term rental in town that would be a target for affordable housing. I just don't think they exist. So I'm refuting that comment that Adam made.
I generally agree. I think the way the town of Ridgway has addressed the short-term rental issue with our licensing program and limiting the number of licenses, I think we have less of an issue with short-term rentals as some communities. So I generally agree with you.
Okay. Thanks.
But bringing it back up here to, I think it's kind of a debate, and just again, this is just to give staff some direction to take it to the next, kind of between, I think Terry's proposal of raising the tax percentage to 6% from 3.5, and then changing the tourism promotion and workforce housing split to 50-50, pretty close to what, I don't remember how Beth's was different from that.
I think she was just vacillating between 5 and 6.
Oh, 5 and 6, okay.
With the 50.
So, and then Russ and I just sort of teamed up to suggest that we go to that 6% level, but do a 60-40 split instead. Does the rest of the board feel strongly on one or the other?
I would be on team 50-50.
I think I'm on team 50-50, not because I want to take away from the chamber, but because I want to add to workforce housing.
Okay. Move the 60-40. So that would make sort of a 4-3 split with Beth and Terry on the 50-50 bandwagon. That's saying 5 and 6. I think she'd probably be okay with 6 because bigger number.
And to be clear, both of those options increase the budget for the chamber. Just by different amounts.
Based on the extrapolation. So I just jump in one more time. Sorry, not trying to be rude.
No, appreciate it.
Nothing has to be decided tonight. And just for the sake of folks who don't have the staff report in front of you, for the town to participate in the November election, put a ballot on the question on the ballot. Town would need to submit a notice of intent to the Erie County Clerk and Recorder's Office by end of July 28th. And then the title and the content for the ballot issue would need to be finalized by council, approved via resolution, and issued to the county before September 8th. All that to say, there's still some time. You know, I heard two separate proposals here where we're trying to get direction. I think at this point, perhaps Pam, Bo, myself have what we need to further craft some ballot language. Wondering if there might be some direction from council to submit that notice of intent to the county. Don't have to do that yet, but that would be an important next step as well. But I think absent a decision on the 60-40 or 50-50 split on a 6% increase, we'd be okay for now. I think we would have.
Yeah, that's my feeling is that we ask you guys to go back and look at the numbers for, say, 2018, 2019. I think you have 2020 here, right? Or is it just, yeah, 2020 is here. So bring up 2 more years prior to 2020. Focus in on what it would be at 6% and either 60-40 or 50-50. So that we have those numbers and we can all look at those together and decide what we think about that. And then at the same time, move forward with an affordable housing mitigation fee, dig a little deeper and see what the staff thinks we can, if we can craft something like that. And as far as the inclusionary zoning fee in lieu of, I think there's also interest in pursuing that. I don't know how much more direction you need on those 2 items, but
I think we have all the direction you need, and we can start honing in on some potential language for chapter 7, section 7.
Great.
I was trying to mention before, but
okay. All right.
I think we have what we need.
Good. If I might chime in again, this conversation will only just continue come this fall when we start to discuss the contract with the chamber. And so as we think about these dollars that we're earmarking to be spent for marketing or for workforce housing, you know, there's a lot of ways to think outside of the box of how that money can be spent. So allotting this now, giving you an idea of how we want to move forward. Everything's on the table. You know, do we want 60% of these funds being used to in whatever way, whether it's to the chamber, whether it's, as Tim mentioned, even something particularly completely different that hasn't even been brought up yet. Wow, because it's going to be a whole nother discussion. It's great that we have all of this input, that we're all in here talking, because this is just going to continue. It's not just going to end with the ballot measure. And so let's keep going. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being here. Everybody who's in here.
And if it's not the chamber, I get that it's not, there's no exclusive rights to the chamber. It's not the chamber or independent marketing agency. I would just encourage you to a budget, substantial budget to help business and support tourism.
Yeah, and I think all really the gist of what Kevin's saying is that the onus is on the chamber to do your homework and sell us, as he said earlier, on what it is you guys are providing. Get the business community to speak out and talk about what you're doing for them. Maybe do a little door to door and talk to the business owners that aren't chamber members yet. Find out why they aren't, what they want from the chamber, the kinds of things that you could do. And I know I'm talking about more work, and I see Tim grinning.
I'm not on the board,
but you're a perfect volunteer.
Yeah.
You know, and
They came because it's the business community.
Understood. But there's a lot more business owners out there that have honestly said other things and feel differently. And
Well, Ashley's been making it happen, believe me.
I know, and Ashley and I have talked about this.
Some of them she can't please whether she tries or not. You know, there's just the fact of life.
I understand. But, you know, you're never going to have 100. Believe me, if we don't understand that fact, no one does. You're never going to have 100% support. But, you know, there's more you guys can do to show that the business community is behind you and as a majority, thanks you're doing. Good stuff. And that, you know, people like Richard, I mean, what Richard's done for the town in the last 5 years with ski joring and, you know, growing the rodeo and the new arena and everything, it's incredible. And that's very valuable and he values what you guys do for his events. That's a big deal. So, I think those are just things that you can go on.
Can I say one last thing, please? That's a great point you make, Kevin. You mentioned the fall. I have a placeholder on the July 12th, I think it is, council meeting agenda. Actually, I think, is that supposed to be the biannual report?
We usually push it to September. That's been essentially the biannuals.
July or August or something like that. Well, then I do believe I would offer that I think that would be the appropriate time to have maybe the conversation Kevin is talking about so that staff can get some direction on how to proceed with getting a new agreement in place or looking at alternative stuff like that. So just a heads up now.
As a part of the process and those funds and get reviews annually, has the town ever considered taking bids from other entities that could provide the service? Out of curiosity.
Not in my recollection. I mean, RAC has been around as long as I've been here and there's never been anybody else to ask. I mean, I agree with you that there was a really interesting time there about, what was it, maybe 5 years ago, where it sounded like Okra and RAC were going to get together and we're going to finally have a countywide tourism organization. And then everything hit the fan up the road. And now the city of Uray does their own tourism promotion, which is really unusual, really unusual. And so it's unfortunate because I think we have a lot of potential there, but it is what it is. Yeah. But no, I in all my years, I've never had anybody say, hey, we should put this out to bid. We have an organization that is, we've not always seen eye to eye, but things have really improved in the last 10 years. And I think we can continue to have that relationship, but you know, it's up for renewal, so that's what Kevin's talking about. Anyone else can weigh in? Say we move on. Thanks for the discussion. Thank you guys. You know, it shouldn't be read as any sort of integration of the chamber or you know, we're not intending it to be contentious. We're really just trying to find funds to build workforce housing, which in my view, at its core is going to supply housing for our businesses' employees. So with that, we will move on. Thank you all for coming with this item. That takes us to, I believe, oh no, we have one more thing. Update on the annual council scholarship to a local high school senior. That's got my name on it. Beth and I are the scholarship committee. We chose a recipient out of the 4 applications that we received. I'm not going to name that person tonight because they're going to find out as a surprise tomorrow. But I'll just let you know we are giving $1,000, and Russ very kindly is going to the event tomorrow to give the scholarship out because I'm going to be out of town. But I'm really proud of the fact that we do a $1,000 scholarship for our local youth, and another very worthy applicant is getting it this year. So that takes us to written and verbal reports, town manager's report, which we got earlier today. It's okay. I know how it goes. Another great report. Anything you want to highlight?
There's actually a lot I'd like to highlight, so buckle up.
Okay.
And I'll try to go through it quick. Please ask questions as we go. April 27th, 2023, a date that will live in infamy here in Ridgway. That was the water main break. For our staff here, 27th in the morning of the 29th was a lot. It was 52 hours like holding our breath from the time the main broke to getting the results back from the lab to lift the boil water advisory. I just want to give a shout out here to a few names, and it's not a few, it's a lot. Randy Barnes, Jeff Rivera, Stephen Schroeder, Mike Jenkins, Bobby Barnes, Rodney Paulson, Tanner Kingring, Jen Peterson, Glenn Boyd, Susan Lacey, Aaron McIntyre, Chelsea Cotton, and Ben Kiley, there with the state of Colorado. And then the entire community for all their patience and support. That was a tough couple of days. So thank you for reading that.
Yeah, thanks, Preston.
Street grading operations are underway. Make sure you move your cars by 6 a.m. on the day that your streets slated to be graded. Thanks to Mike and Jeff for spearheading that effort like they do every year. We have the RFP for the master plan for Ridgway Athletic Park issued currently, and it's making the rounds on different websites and stuff and such. The proposals are due by 10 a.m. on Friday, June 2nd. The skate park repair work was completed a few weeks back. Shout out to Jeff and Bobby for working with the crew at or the couple folks from Evergreen's skate parks on those repairs. The Ridgway Wetterhorn Homes lottery timeline we went over briefly earlier in the evening. That lottery drawing is midday on Thursday, June 15th. I will be sending out some calendar holds. And
I will not be available.
I'll not be available that day. It's
First day of Bluegrass Festival.
of the which one?
Bluegrass Festival.
Oh, Bluegrass. Okay. You see appeal hearing if needed, exception hearing if needed. We'll learn as we get forward if those are going to be needed, obviously. But I'll throw out some holds on calendars and such, and then follow up with some more information. I heard from Aaron Stadelman today that the units from Fading West are going to be temporarily stored at the fairgrounds as the county's working with Paul Major on that while the foundation work is being completed. The building permit's slated to be issued no later than end of day this coming Monday. So big deal there. Love Your Valley's coming up.
Yay, Pam!
Cam, shout out to Cam and Deb to getting that together. Not a small effort, so thank you. Cam's back from Italy.
Buongiorno.
I don't know how we made it a month without Cam.
It went fast, that's for sure.
Faster for her, probably.
Yeah, right.
We talked about the Space Creek grand opening celebration. Hope everyone can make it. We're advertising for the Youth Advisory Council, the 2023-2024 Youth Advisory Council right now. Shout out John Clark, Rodney, and Bobby for the annual cleanup event. That went really great. Good turnout as always. We talked about the developer workshop. We'll look to have it hybrid. Update on the workforce transportation project, the Ridgway County Workforce Transportation Project. Mayor Clark and I got a note from Sarah Curtis with All Points Transit that CDOT's just been part of the course. They just have a lot going on and short staffed, but they haven't received an executed contract for those MMOF monies, and are recommending that the launch date be postponed to June 15th. No one as part of that work group has expressed any issues with that. I mean, you kind of need that contract in place with those grant monies to feel confident about proceeding with the pilot project. So stay tuned on that. And I think, this last Saturday, I think it was, Marshall was part of the Western Slope Law Enforcement Community Discussion held at the 4-H. And I heard you were at that. I don't know how many others were there. But,
it was a big crowd.
That's what Shane was saying. It was like 100 people or something like that. So it sounded like it was a good discussion, well received by a lot of folks. So that's great. Deputy Pickle will be returning to duty in June 1st. Be looking at May 31st. May 31st. So it'd be great to have him back and on the schedule. There is, we were talking about this at the forefront, but there's an ice cream social to say goodbye to Mrs. Liz Tights on May 24th, 5:30 p.m. in Hartwell Park. And it's, I see it as maybe a goodbye to Liz, but it's also a hello to Daniel Schmidt. Is that his name? So, you better be good. You better be.
Big shoes to fill.
Big shoes to fill. That's all I have.
All right, except for that lovely joke from Polly. Anybody you want to hear it? Did you hear it? My uncle has two Dobermans. One is called Rolex, the other is called Timex. They're watchdogs.
I have no shame in it.
We take all comers. If you got a joke you want to offer. You've been in here, guys.
I loved the investigator. That made me giggle.
All right, thank you, Preston. Great report. What's going on?
We want to look at the adopt a highway.
Yeah, we need to find a date to do the highway cleanup.
Someone wants to throw out a date or something right now. Otherwise I can do it. I think I said that last night. I was gonna send out a poll.
Going to sit on hold February 29th, 2025.
No. That's about June, Saturday, June 3rd. No, yeah, that could work. What?
Oh, no.
No?
Oh, sorry.
Can we do it? June 4th? Yeah. Can you send that? I'll do it to her. I was just gonna see if he's right about that. Thanks, Sue.
Thanks, Sue.
Anything else? Let's see, committee reports.
2 months to give a full committee report on sustainability advisory board, but a lot of things are happening between reviewing the cap, which will come across our discussion soon. Just went through a workshop on going through it item by item and the mechanism of their traction tool to see what every other town and in the region is doing. I think I'm going to send you guys all a letter, especially related to what's happening with the state building code board and they're in the executive session right now. That's going to be a big impact across the state. And so I'll try to do my best to give you guys a synopsis before we head into just being blindsided with all of the new changes. All right. So that's it from Sustainability Advisory Board, and the website is actually coming along really strongly right now.
Great. Good news.
No, not really. I was at the Uray County Planning Commission, which was kind of the second version of supposed to be tying into the master plan. It was terribly painful. They are working on progressing it. The big issue they found is that from the first open house, the demographics aren't fully represented, so it's primarily a bunch of geezers that they're providing.
You're calling a geezer.
Myself,
You and me both.
yeah. So, but not to say that I'm calling us out, but their numbers show that. So
Interesting.
trying to figure out how to actually get a hold of younger demographics of people that live here and understand some things. And other than that, it was pretty painful. But, as they went through the survey to see if they had the right questions or if they needed to
I can imagine. All right, anybody else have anything?
Fuse groups full steam ahead for June 22nd for the Space to Create and the 10-year anniversary. Tara touched on it earlier. She's earning all of her pennies, hands down.
Yep, she's doing that recertification.
Recertification is what I was going to bring up next. You're absolutely right. So that's kind of near focus for the next month plus.
And the CCI summit and convening.
All of the above.
Good stuff.
I have an update that's not relative to.
Council under Sustainability Advisory Board as well.
There you go.
Because Terry gave us a great presentation and synthesis, and I'll give you the segue that he was called back by DOLA on his respective grants, so this is news to me now as well.
Okay, so I had a meeting with DOLA on Monday to review the 4 planning grant applications for microgrids that I put in, one of which is for Ridgway. As a refresher on what that specifically was, we're looking for planning grant money, $36,000 to vet the possibility of a microgrid, one on Dana Ivers property, and then to look at the 2 possible parcels in Ridgway, with the idea being that The one on Green Street would be kind of independent, small. The one that would possibly be on the south portion of the soccer field adjacent to Dana's property, that could be combined with Dana's system to make one aggregated larger system that would provide the solar recharge capability, the battery bank capability that would back up the entire town of Ridgway, all electric circuits of Ridgway for 4 to 6 hours. So it'd be a battery backed up microgrid. In the questions I got from DOLA, they asked the main question, which I expected, which is how do I prioritize the 4 grants? And one was for microgrid for Rico, another for microgrid for Over, same concept, 4 to 6 hours backup. Third was Ridgway, much larger systems, four times larger than those other 2. And the fourth was small systems, back up the communications for our Ridgway and Nuclear offices so that we can maintain communications during outages. One of the big filters in the grant review process is the socioeconomic filter, with the Justice 40 as being one of the metrics. None of the communities qualified. Rico, Ophir, nor Ridgway qualify on that metric. Another metric is infrastructure vulnerability risk, which is the idea of what anchor institutions, what infrastructure is most vulnerable during an outage. And Ridgway shines on that one because we have medical clinics, and we have fire departments, and we have an EMS, and we have restaurants, and we have town buildings. Long story short, they seem to favor, number one, oddly enough, the small office systems, because that reaches out to a huge community, including the marginalized communities. Second, they thought was the Ridgway because of the sheer numbers of people that would be affected by the money, which is roughly 1,200 residents would benefit from this. Third and fourth were Rico and Ophir, which is the exact opposite of the engineering perspective, which is those other communities have greater electrical vulnerabilities in terms of power delivery. But the fact is that there was only 7 applications for possible 11 grants, and I put in 4 of them.
For 25% of the total budget.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I think it's boding well that we'll get that planning grant money. And then, of course, that leads to the process of me working with the town sustainability committee to vet the town parcels in particular, and then go through the engineering to see, which is the most cost effective. Ultimately, combining all the grants to figure out what the amount of money that San Miguel Power would have to finance, such that the financed amount and the dollar per kilowatt hour, basically cents per kilowatt hour, would be competitive with coal. So the goal is that by adding the batteries to the solar, we can deliver the solar at night and have a demand savings. The monetization of that battery bank would lower the cents per kilowatt hour of the lifetime of the system to be less than what we're paying Tri-State for dirty coal energy. So this would be a win-win-win for all entities involved. The question will become before the council at some point to try to down select which of the 2 sites. I'm not going to put any favor in that, but combining it with Dana's makes a lot of sense. But that might play into the master plan for the park. So I want to make sure that that's one of the things listed as considerations.
I'll invite you to the meetings.
Okay. Oh, great.
I think the Parks, Trails and Open Spaces Committee is aware that that is something that is on the docket. I know that, come on brain, Dave was a little concerned about the one over on Green Street.
Yeah,
potentially,
even though
but
he would be the one most, the solar would be most visible from his house.
yeah,
So to be clear, this does not preempt the bike pump track, the adjacent to it. It doesn't eliminate it. It's just the space next to it.
oh yeah, and I know this, I'm just sharing.
And actually, talking to Matt got excited. He's the guy that's working the bike. He wants to put the solar over the bike pump track.
Oh,
Have
that'd
a shaded bike pump track. I said, well, we'll look at that. But
That feels like a lot of liability of poles and heads.
yeah, no, I'd have to, that, I
feels like
the idea, but I didn't go into any detail. Or possibly put in shaded parking structures on the parking area. Carports essentially. Anyway, all these things are what the planning grant is going to give us money to look at.
Yeah.
So that's good. Okay. Unless they go deploy.
If you guys will bear with me 1 second, I just want to say one thing on the record since we're talking. I think we let that conversation kind of get out of hand, and I don't think we were focusing on the right thing. I think what we should have been focusing on was our belief of what money should be spent on marketing and what money should be spent on affordable housing. I know that it ties into the budget with the chamber right now, but that is a whole separate entity, knowing that that discussion is going to have to come up. It actually might take a little more introspect for each of us in terms of how much do we feel that we need to be spending on marketing and tourism in the town, and try to focus on that. I know it's not that easy to say. I just wanted to say that.
All good points, but the fact of the matter is, we're a community, and everybody in the community has opinions about these things, and the chamber has been an entity around here for a long time, and you can say what you want about whether or not they're actually serving a business community. Some people think they are, some people think they are. You can't just say, we don't want to hear your opinion, and we just focus on what we think is going to happen.
That opinion is valuable. At the end of the day, it's money that's allotted toward marketing and tourism. And
Understood.
Whatever vessel that eventually goes through.
There's
just,
that's always been
that could have gotten us out of a little tense moment, I feel, just a reminder that
maybe might have made it more tense.
They might have made it worse.
Let me ask you, maybe the conversation for a different time. We contract with them, right? As explained. So is there a job description of things we expected as deliverables for them to live up to?
Or is the contract has
There's a professional services agreement with what you're talking about in there. And we've learned that it probably needs to be a bit more specific. So.
Where is that?
With KPIs. PSA with KPIs.
Where's what? I'm sorry.
That document,
It's.
just so I can, I just didn't.
It's not.
It's probably not on the website.
On the website. I mean, it's in our files.
The staff could send it to us.
But that's good to know,
Yeah.
because in my mind, they aren't, it wasn't separate conversations, but they are.
Something. No, I like to try to learn from all of these experiences. That went well somewhat, but also could have gone better. So,
And
probably for issues, but.
just like a procedure question. I know we said at the beginning of the discussion, let's limit this to 5 minutes per person. How does that work? And how does one say? I'm genuinely curious.
I just have to say, all the years that I've been doing this, I always err on the side of giving people all the time they need to say what they need to say, because I find that when you cut people off, that raises their hackles. I sat here thinking, okay, I said limited to 5 minutes, and at least 2 of them went on for 15 or 20. I probably should have asked them to. I really,
I'm not.
and it's all on me.
Thank you. I was
No, it's my job to keep things moving, but Pam will vouch for me. I always err on the side of letting people have their say, and I feel like we get better results as a result, but it goes too far sometimes.
Yeah, I genuinely was just curious, because I've never had a discussion.
5 minutes and then
Go
they
like
went on
this.
for
Yeah,
20, so
yeah,
it's a tough one.
just curious.
I do better say none of the records, so thank you for this.
Twice I came this close to interrupting, and I actually did interrupt once to let Adam have his say. It's tricky,
Okay.
but more than once in the past, I've had people say, you know, gotta cut people off sooner. It's always a tricky battle.
Yeah, and I do think that it would have gotten more contentious and more anger would have compiled over time had it been cut off. So I think this was the right choice. I just was.
Yeah,
We could make it more objective with like a debate timer.
Well, and that's a valid point. I mean, the county does that. The county has a giant clock on there.
A bunch of cities do. They have some have a green light, a yellow light, a red light. When that yellow light goes off, you have like 10 seconds, and then when the red light goes off, they shut off the mic.
Oh.
That's
That's not Ridgway.
No.
But your point's well taken. I should do a better job. it kind of depends on the night, it depends on where we're at on the clock. I mean, I should have, at least one of those people I should have cut off.
It's great to have that much, impact,
Yeah.
input from everybody.
Some people are always.
And if I may,
We're on the record.
Go.
What do we should be.
yeah, I just think we want to distinguish between like a public hearing and, a discussion forum. And so when we are in a public hearing, it is better to adhere to those timeframes and not allow for somebody to speak more than once, versus the more colloquial discussion that we have just with general senses.
And
Thanks.
just for clarification, because I'm still super new. This was one of the situations that should have been a little more to form, but our past conversations like last month.
Sorry to interrupt, but no, it was totally appropriate for it to be informal because we weren't in that public hearing process. So.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying, because obviously I was confused.
Well, thank you for saying something, because I need to be reminded that I need to, I was going around in my head, this is going on too long, but trying to let people.
Get there.
So, anything else? We good?
An executive session.
Oh, we do.
I think we we're about to go.
My bad. Thank you for reminding me. I was ready to adjourn. Sorry about that, Bo. Here we are rambling on. So you see, you should have interrupted me sooner.
No, again, it's about being organic, right? And getting the most out of the conversation. And knock on wood, I think it's going to be a relatively short executive session.
Okay, awesome. Good. Well, read the citation for us, if you would.
Yeah, if we could get a motion to go into executive session pursuant to 24-6-4024B for consultation with the town attorney and 24-6-4024E for matters subject to negotiation regarding the town's possible purchase of water rights.
Moved.
Second. Motion made by Polly, seconded by Russ. All in favor? Opposed? One of us is in the bathroom, but in a minute we can get started.
Ready for a nap?
What?
Dr. JT.
When did you get back?
Yesterday.
I got one last night.
Probably need a nap.
I took one today.
Well, what time zone is?
It's a couple hours different. I'm just, I'm blank out there, like 11 hours. It's probably. Yeah, but I'm not slowing down.
Okay, Bo.
All right, it is Wednesday, May 10th. The time is 8:54 PM. For the record, I am the town attorney. Also present at this executive session are the following persons. Turn it over the room.
Kevin Grambley.
Kelly Kroger.
Russ Warner,
John Clark.
JT Thomas,
Terry Schuyler.
Rustin Neal.
Aircraft.
That's it.
And we have Joanne Fagan and myself, Bo Nerlin, attending via Zoom. This is an executive session pursuant to 24-6-4024E for matters subject to negotiation regarding the town's possible purchase of water rights, and 24-6-4024B for consultation with the town attorney regarding the same. I caution each participant to confine the discussion to the stated purpose of the executive session. If any time you feel like we go outside the proper scope of the executive session, please interrupt the discussion and make an objection on the record. As the town attorney, it's my position that the discussion constitutes privileged attorney-client communication. Therefore, I'm recommending that no recording be kept of this executive session. The time is 9:12 PM. We will conclude the executive session and return to the open meeting. The time is now 9:12 PM. We have concluded the executive session pursuant to 24-6-4024B for discussion with the town attorney and 4E for matters subject to negotiation regarding the town's possible purchase of water rights. Participating in the executive session were the following persons. Turn it over to the room.
Kevin Grambley,
Holly Kroger.
Russ Meyer.
John Clark.
JT Thomas, Terry Skyler.
Preston Neal.
Pam Craft.
Bo Nerlin and Joanne Fagan via Zoom. If any participant believes we went outside the proper scope of the executive session, please make an objection on the record. Hearing none, I'll turn it back over to the mayor.
Thanks, Bo. And thanks, staff. Unless I hear any objections, I will declare us adjourned.
Can I show you this one?
Thanks, Bo. Thanks, Joanne.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
You're doing maths at this hour?
Thanks. Have a good evening.
Very good.